Hello, this is Colm and welcome to a brand new video, and today we'll be reacting to Mr. Nightmare again, because I have no other video ideas apparently. But today I am not alone. I've been joined by the Brew Bro himself, aka what I call him, the Brew asshole, Sonic the Hedgehog. Hi guys. Oh, for God's sake. So basically, if you don't know why I brought Sonic on the channel today, it's because, you know, as you may have known, that Sonic's going to be starting a YouTube channel. He's already started it, but he's not made a video on it yet, so, you know. But he's going to be doing these kind of videos as well, so. I basically decided to bring him along so he would know, like, what he's going to get into. So, yeah, that's pretty much, you know, what I've decided to do. And in this video onwards, this episode onwards, I'll bring in a special guest or guests from Epic Road series, so I expect like Stalwart, Esther, bloody Sonic, well obviously Sonic, maybe Shadow the Shadow, maybe, I don't know, probably not because I don't want them on my channel, but maybe. If I want to annoy them for like an hour and a half, you know, that's something, but I'm Metal as well. But like pretty much all the helpers, at least the ones I actually like. But you know, I decided to bring Sonic along. So there's been 5 videos of Mr. Nightmare since the last one, because it was on like the 4th of October when I released the last video. So I'm decided to release 5 more videos in that time period, and obviously Sonic's not seen this channel before, have you, Sonic? No, but I'm looking forward to it though. I might get a bit scared though. You're Sonic the Hedgehog. You're not supposed to be scared of anything. Yeah, but you know, these are true horror stories, but we don't know if they're actually true or not. There's been like something on the internet, are they actually true? All these stories that Mr. Nightmare reads in his videos are actually true. I don't care if they're true or not, I just like reacting to them, and you know. So yeah, we're going to be going through this way. We're going to be going from motel horror stories, trick-or-treating horror stories, Las Vegas horror stories, 8 Unsolved Mysteries of Halloween, and October horror stories, and then we'll go to older videos. So, are you ready, Sonic? Ready as I'll ever be. Okay, this one was released very recently. It got released on 4 days ago, so on Monday, the 1st of November, and now it's the 6th, so it was like 5 days ago. Nearly 5 days ago. So, yeah. I'm looking forward to this. He didn't do a Halloween thing this year, but, you know, the guys did the trick-or-treating and the freaking, Mysteries of Halloween, so I'm being a bit greedy here. So yeah, it's 1st of November, this is the latest video.
During a road trip, I was passing through Ohio. It was around that time I was starting to get sleepy behind the wheel, so I stopped in this small town called Xenia. I looked for a hotel or motel, and found this place called Xenia Country Inn. It looked a little run down, but so did this whole town if I'm being honest. Plus, all I needed was a night's sleep. Nothing fancy, so I parked in the lot and went to the little front office, which was in the front corner of one of the 2 buildings to the motel. There was an old man sitting there reading the paper. It was hot in there, and there was a loud buzzing sound from his tabletop fan. I asked for a room, and the man finally looked up from his paper without greeting me and said 65. I assumed he meant $65 for the room, so I handed him my credit card.
Well, if you're not
I asked if it's possible to get a corner room, and he simply said no. The customer service here was clearly not something included in the price. The man handed me this old-fashioned key on an otherwise blank key ring. They still didn't use key cards at this place. I walked across the parking lot to my room. The door was actually hard to unlock. I had to shimmy the key a little just to get it to finally turn. Before walking in, I looked around the lot, and there were only 2 other cars in the parking lot. It was a ghost town. I stepped into the room, and it smelled like a mix of cotton and vomit. I wondered if I should go back and ask for a different room, but I realized by the look of this place, all the rooms probably smelled. The room was small, and had a blue, dirty, worn-out looking carpet, a couch, a small coffee table, and a bed. I shut the door and tried to lock it, but I was having trouble. More trouble than I did unlocking it. After about 30 seconds of shimmying and almost popping a blood vessel trying to unlock it, I felt I may have broken it. But when I tried opening the door, it wouldn't open. So even though the door wasn't fully locked, as long as the door wouldn't open, that's all that mattered, I figured.
Yeah.
I crawled up in the bed,
I can see how
and I
this is
heard
gonna
all
go.
the old springs squeaking as my weight pushed into the mattress and the bed
Unfortunately,
frame.
so do I.
I tried putting on the TV, but of course the remote didn't work. So I just crawled under the covers and tried to go to sleep. Then it happened. I nearly jumped out of my own skin when there was one loud thump at the window. I looked at the guy standing outside of it, and he started talking, sounding all hurt and in need of help. He was saying, "Hey, please let me in, I hurt myself bad, I need help." And he definitely saw me in that bed. I yelled back to go to the front desk. He wouldn't stop though. There was no way I was opening that door. I had a feeling he was acting and this was a trap. Eventually, after ignoring him for long enough, he left. I turned to check and confirm, and he was gone. I hadn't realized how truly unsafe this area was. I had to get up and check the lock on the door just to be safe and make sure the door wouldn't open. I gave the door a couple good pulls, and it didn't open. I then closed the curtains in front of the two windows so that he couldn't come back and look in at me again. That shook me up a bit, but the nerves calmed within half an hour, and I was able to fall into a half sleep not too long after. I started having this weird dream where I was in a closed supermarket running from the manager who was chasing me, and at some point during the dream, these clicking sounds started taking over, to the point that my whole dream shifted to incorporate these sounds, and then with that, I was awake. The room was cold for some reason, and I looked down and realized the blanket was pulled off of me. I sat up to pull it back over me, but then I saw at the foot of the bed, there was this tall figure looming over me. Before I could scream, he went shh and told me not to move. He told me he wouldn't hurt me if I didn't make any movements or sounds. Then he asked me where my wallet was. I told him in my jeans pocket on the floor. All I saw was this figure towering over me in the bed, moving away from the foot of the bed to my jeans on the floor.
Oh God.
I heard him rustling with the jeans, digging through the pocket until he found it. Then he asked what else I had in there. I was just taking a road trip. With that, he didn't say another word and left. I ran to try and relock the door as soon as he left, having the same trouble as earlier. I then called the police, but they were of no immediate assistance. We went to the guy at the front desk, who played back the video footage caught. However, the guy who entered the room was wearing a face mask and a hat, hiding all of his features. I got my money back and left. Thank God I didn't have much cash in my wallet. I canceled all my cards and slept in my car. I learned my lesson, never to stop at a sketchy motel.
You should have figured that out before. Bloody hell, that was a bit scary, wasn't it? Well, it would be for someone that's not watched these videos yet.
Early last year, my father and I traveled down to do some charity work in a small town that was flooded from recent rainfall. We had gathered a truckload full of donated clothes and items to help families get back on their feet. The first night, we stayed in a hotel that had a perfect view of the ocean. That night, my dad and I stayed up watching the Blair Witch Project on my laptop using the hotel's free Wi-Fi. Let's just say I didn't get much sleep. The next night, my mom had booked us a room at a motel, seeing as we didn't expect to stay a second night. It was 100 meters away from a trailer park, and the property overlooked a large lake. The area was tucked away from the public and was surrounded by trees. My mom claimed that everywhere else was fully booked, so we had no other options. We met the two managers who ran and lived at the motel. There was an old lady who was sweet and informed us about everything we needed to know, including the fact that the lake hadn't been full for 20 years. Her husband, however, looked like he was taken straight from a serial killer movie. Him being the serial killer. He never spoke a word to us, he never smiled. His wrinkles melted on his face, and he had dark rings around his eyes. That's when my dad and I started to have an uneasy feeling about that place. The rest of the day went by in a blur, so my dad and I went out for pizza and a movie afterward to avoid going back to that place as much as possible. Once we arrived back at the motel, it was around 8 p.m., and it was completely dark. As we went to the back of the truck to get our luggage, we found a bag of children's clothes hidden underneath a spare tire. We began to walk the bag over to the trailer park, thinking that a family may get good use out of it, and I felt the sudden urge to go back to the motel, seeing as we watched a scary movie last night, coincidentally about teenagers encountering a witch in the woods. We went to the front desk with the bag and asked the creepy old manager if we could leave it with him to donate to the trailer park, seeing as they were neighbors and we had to leave early in the morning to go back home. His eyes widened and he shook his head while saying, "No, there's no way in hell, I refuse to go there." Then he walked off. Dad and I just looked at each other, saying with our eyes, what the hell just happened? We then decided to drop it off in the charity bin back home. We went to sleep once we had all our showers, which was about an hour or so later. I specifically remember waking up at 2:17 a.m. because of Dad's snoring. I stayed up reading a book on my phone, my body faced towards the door. I also remember hearing cars speeding up and down the driveway that night. I let the thought slide, thinking it was just some guys goofing off. That assumption later vanished after I noticed a bright blue light appear through the cracks on the top and bottom part of the door, and silent whispers coming from the other side that I was unable to decipher. I was too scared to even move. I was frozen in the spot. My heart was beating in my throat and my hands were shaking, and I mean literally shaking. I heard the door handle begin to rattle, and that's when I knew that this wasn't going to end well. The light then disappeared, followed by complete and utter silence. I was still frozen in that spot for another 3 minutes, which felt like hours, before I woke up to my dad and told him everything that had happened. He then laughed and explained to me that earlier in the night he couldn't sleep due to hearing scratches in the walls right beside our bed. I was confused and didn't believe him until he put his finger to his lips while saying, "Shh, do you hear that?" Everything went silent until I heard brief scratches coming from our bed frame. I shot out of the bed and told Dad that we needed to leave, so we left the room key on the bed while sneaking off to the truck. We ended up leaving at 2:32 a.m. Never will I ever go near that motel ever again.
I love how he remembered the times as well.
Unleash the speed of liquid with Nurofen Express Liquid Cap.
Sonic, we're not even through our first video yet, and we've got many more to go through. I know.
Long story short, my ex-girlfriend and I had a pretty explosive relationship, and we didn't get along very often. We were on this weekend trip in the mountains just to go sightseeing and hiking because we thought it would be good for us. But shit hit the fan in the hotel room on the second night, and basically I couldn't sleep in the same room as her. Instead of getting another hotel room for myself for like $150, I drove literally down the road to a motel and stopped there to stay for a fraction of the price. My logic was, if I left for the night and gave her time to cool off, maybe things would be better by morning. I got a room for, I'm not lying, $50 for the night. And I was walking towards my room. The room next door was wide open. As I passed, I looked inside, and it was lit up by the blue glow of the TV screen. Though from the angle I was at, I could not see what was on the screen. I didn't see anyone inside, but then again, I didn't stop to look like a weirdo. I proceeded to my room. It was a modest, normal-looking motel room for the price. Just a queen-size bed with a typical tacky floral bed cover, a TV, and a sofa. I wasn't really tired, so I just laid with the TV on and played games on my phone for a while. There was some weird noise from what I thought was coming from the TV, so I turned it off. But the noise persisted. It wasn't the TV. So I got up and listened, and realized it was coming from the room next door. I couldn't tell if it was a fighting couple, if it was the TV from next door, or if it was the sound of someone dying. It was just incredibly muffled.
Yeah, Sonic.
At this point, I had nothing else to do but to try and go to sleep. But then there was a banging on the wall separating the two rooms. I got up and went closer to the wall, and it happened again.
Sonic.
It was without a doubt someone on the other side pounding on it with their fist. Why were they doing this? I can't say I wasn't a little freaked out, but I had to just be a man and confront them. I went over next door. Surprisingly, the door to the room was still open, and the TV was still on, but there was no sound. I knocked on the open door, asking if there was a problem or if someone needed help. There was no response. I could even see that the bathroom door was open and the light was off. I stepped into the room slowly, cautiously. When I cleared the wall, blocking the view of the sofa and the bed, and still saw nobody, I just stood there all confused like. I went closer to the TV to look at what exactly was on the screen.
No,
It was just a blank blue screen.
No.
But there was a sticky note on the screen. It had writing on it. I picked it off the screen. It said, "Check under the bed."
No.
I dropped the note and ran out of the room, slamming the door.
Oh,
I ran back to my room and made sure to double lock the door with the chain lock. I crawled into bed and texted my girlfriend telling her what just happened and that I was freaking out. She called me immediately and I started telling her over the phone. As I was mid-explaining it, there were more bangs on the motel room wall. She heard it clearly because I put it on speaker. I started freaking out, and she told me to run to my car or to the front desk. I chose to run to the front desk so I could get my money back. I told the guy at the front desk that he should go to the room next to mine and kick the person out. but he looked at me and laughed and said that there was no one staying on either side of that room. He seemed to know immediately that they were both vacant. I told him he needs to check it out and that I needed my money back. So he went with me with the key to the room in his hand and unlocked the door. But now the TV was off and the room was dark. He walked inside and checked under the bed as the note had said. Even the post-it note that I dropped on the floor was gone. He refused to refund me, but it was $50. I didn't care. I left and went back to the hotel to my girlfriend and was glad to hug her and sleep in the same bed as her. I don't know what I witnessed in that motel room. I don't know who or what was under that bed, and I don't want to know.
Oh, Sonic. Oops, wrong one. Sonic. Boy, one freaking video in and you already got scared. Yeah, fam, it's just, I don't know. I know we're here for a few hours, but this is gonna be the death of me. I can tell that, but you know, man up. Man up, Hedgehog. How can I man up? Is that actually terrifying? Yeah, they might be terrifying, but that's the point of horror stories, isn't it? Right, time for trick-or-treating.
I experienced a sketchy situation on Halloween a couple years ago. My cousin came over for Halloween that year just to go trick-or-treating. I was 15 at the time, and I know that's a bit old for trick-or-treating, but hey, it's free candy. My cousin was also 15, and we were planning on taking it easy that Halloween and just hitting enough houses to make a reasonable haul before we went home. My friend and his younger brother went with us, but we eventually went our separate ways. It was pretty busy, and there was a whole lot of kids at every house with decorations up. My cousin Jack and I decided to hit some of the houses with lights on with no kids already on the front stoops. Lots of houses that we had already hit before that had no decorations up and had lights on all had people inside ready to deliver candy to trick-or-treaters. But all the other kids I know for a fact target the heavily decorated houses. We ended up getting through like 4 houses in a minute because of no lineups. The next house in the line was not decorated at all, but there was a light on, so we thought we'd give it a shot. We knocked on the door, and immediately an older man opened the door. He opened it completely, which revealed 5 other guys just standing there. They were much younger than the older man who opened the door. I'm guessing they were in their late 30s, while the older man who opened the door was in his early 50s. He held out a bowl of candy, then reached in and grabbed some and put it in each of our bags. The older man asked Jack what his name was, and Jack responded to his question using a fake name. Jack said bye before the older man could say anything else. We walked off the front stoop, and alarms immediately started going off in my head. Jack seemed alarmed as well, and we started talking about how sketchy that was. Why were there 6 guys right there when we opened the door? Why were they all acting so strange? Those were the questions that were floating around in my head. Jack and I were a little spooked because of how weird that was. We went to 2 more houses, then we started walking to my house. Jack and I glanced back at that house to see a car pulling out of the driveway. The car drove up the way we were walking and started slowing down right next to us. The roads were clear, and all the trick-or-treaters were on the sidewalks, so there should have been no reason the car slowed down right next to us. We picked up the pace a bit, and that's when another car sped up behind them, eventually beginning to go the same pace as the first car. I recognized the guy driving the first car, and the guy driving the second car. The guy driving the first car was the older guy who gave us the candy, and the driver in the second car was one of the 5 guys just standing there suspiciously. There was also somebody in the passenger seat in the first car, but all I could see was the silhouette of the person. When Jack and I were 2 houses away from my house, we saw the first car park right across the street from my house. We didn't even see where the second car went, we just bolted back inside my house. Our parents, who were sitting in the living room talking, asked us what was wrong. We told them the whole story, and when we were finished, we went to the window to check if that car was still parked across the street, and it was. But then 5 seconds after I checked, it drove off. It had probably been parked there for the 5 minutes since we went inside my house. My mom and Jack's mom wanted Jack and I to go show our dads the house where all those guys were in. But eventually, our parents calmed us down and told us it was just a Halloween gag or something. Though I have my own theory on what was going on. The reason why there were 6 guys in the main doorway was because when a lone trick-or-treater or group of trick-or-treaters much younger than Jack and I came to the door, they were looking to jump or snatch them. But when they saw that Jack and I were teenagers and literally the same height as them, they decided to play it cool, even though they still looked sketchy. And why they were following us in their cars, we will never know. But when the night ended and everyone was off to bed, I realized that house is only 1 block from my house.
Oh. I'm gonna be hearing Sonic going every 5 seconds.
This was many years ago. My old buddy Anthony and I were getting on our costumes to go trick-or-treating. We started going house to house just like a normal night. We got to the old part of our neighborhood, where our parents would tell us not to go because we were only 12 years old and we didn't know our way around there. We walked up to the first house there, and a nice lady opened the door who gave us big Hershey bars. After that, while we were walking to literally only the second house in this part of the neighborhood, this random guy came screaming and running towards us down the street. He came out from behind a church. We thought it was just a Halloween prank at first, like anyone would, so we stood there just laughing. But as soon as he got up to us, he tried taking the pillowcase full of candy out of my hands, so my buddy Anthony started hitting him with his pillowcase. By the time we got to this old neighborhood, we had a lot of candy, so being hit with that pillowcase surely had to hurt. Anthony was hitting him until he let go of the pillowcase and started running away. We thought that was the end of him, until we started walking back, extremely shocked and confused. I called my mom and asked her if she could pick us up because we were pretty far from home, and that whole experience kind of made us want to get off the streets. As soon as she got to our location, we explained what happened, and she almost didn't believe us. That's how ridiculous it sounded. We got home around 10 p.m., and shortly after that, there was a knock at the front door. My dad figured it was just a late-night trick-or-treater, so we went to answer the door, and standing there was a man in a jumpsuit with a Michael Myers mask.
Oh, for God's sake,
My dad was
Sonic.
confused because he was wondering what he was doing out alone trick-or-treating, and based on his height and build, he looked like an older man, not a kid or a teenager. Either way, my dad just gave him candy and didn't really care to say anything. But while Anthony and I were sitting on the couch, we noticed him staring at us, like his masked face was staring right at us in the living room. I felt slightly unsettled by it and was waiting for him to just turn and leave. My dad ended up shutting the door in his face when he wouldn't walk away. So fast forward to like 1 in the morning. We were about to go to bed, but on our way upstairs, we heard a knock at the door. There was no way I was opening the door at that hour, and I knew this couldn't be anything good this late. So I went to tell my dad there was a knock at the door, and he said just ignore it. So Anthony and I go up to the room and turn on a movie. Anthony heard something though, and told me to mute the TV, and when I did, I heard it too. It was the sound of leaves crackling in the backyard.
Oh, jeez.
I looked in the backyard, and I saw that man in the Michael Myers costume, swinging on the swing set in our yard, staring into my bedroom window.
Oh my
I felt like my heart jumped out of my chest and up into my throat.
Oh my God, that was actually
It's like he was
creepy.
purposely recreating a scene from a horror movie to scare us. I ran into my dad's room and told him that the man in the Michael Myers costume was on our swing set. He took on this expression of shock and concern just like ours, and he looked outside, but he didn't see anyone there. Then, right when we were looking, we heard a knock at the back door.
Oh
My
God.
dad went downstairs to the door, but nobody was there. This man was toying with us, harassing us to scare us. It had to be a
Well, mission
Halloween
bloody
prank.
accomplished.
My dad was equally concerned now. All of a sudden, I heard my mom scream in the other room. So Anthony, my dad, and I ran upstairs to see the man in the Michael Myers costume standing at the end of the bed staring at my mom. My dad told Anthony and I to run and call the police. My friend and I ran downstairs and grabbed the nearest phone. We called 911 and told them that a man dressed as Michael Myers had broken into our house. The operator asked if everyone was all right. I said he's upstairs, and my dad has him, but we needed cops immediately. She told me to stay on the phone and that police were en route to the house. From upstairs, there was the sound of my dad screaming, followed by their sliding window being pushed open. The two of us ran upstairs to see my mom and dad laying on the floor. My mom was crying, and my dad's nose was bleeding. My dad said the man jumped out through the window. When the police arrived, Anthony, my dad, and I told them everything we could. They did a sweep of the property inside and out, which took about 20 minutes, and the premises was clear. I think that might have been my last year trick-or-treating, and for good reason. I still wonder if the man that tried to take my candy was the man wearing the Michael Myers costume, and I deeply regret leaving that part out of the story we gave to the police.
God damn. See, Calm, now you were even scared of that story. Yeah, but I was actually terrified. It was actually creepy. The other stories were creepy. Yeah, but not to me they weren't. This was the only story so far that's actually been like creepy. Like, scary. The others were creepy, but oh my. I'm gonna call this episode Sonic the Scaredy Hog. Or something like that. Oh, ha, very funny. I just watched this last story. Okay, so this is from an anonymous person.
Halloween was always one of my least favorite days of the year. I never had a lot of friends in middle school or high school, so I never really had any plans on Halloween. In middle school, I didn't really go trick-or-treating, and in high school, I never really went to any Halloween parties. This was also at a time when my sister was away at college, so due to the fact that my parents were hardly ever home, I'd usually be home alone. This was one of many Halloween nights that I was left home alone. Halloween was on a Friday this particular year, so kids were out in droves and later than usual. My parents were gone for the week. My mom left a bunch of bags of candy for me to hand to kids. I got kind of sick of the doorbell ringing every 5 minutes all day, so eventually I just poured an entire bag of candies into a plastic bowl we had in one of the kitchen cabinets. My mom never really liked leaving a bowl on the stoop, but she wasn't there, so what was she gonna do? That lasted a good while because the constant ringing of the doorbell stopped for a couple hours at least, and when the bowl was empty, I refilled it. I wasn't expecting to hear the doorbell again the rest of the night because even if the bowl were emptied, I assumed people would know not to bother ringing the bell at a house with an empty bowl. So when the bell did ring again, I was not only surprised, but also felt a hint of annoyance. I ignored the first ring, but about 30 seconds later, there was another ring. This time I got up from my computer, pausing the game I was playing, and went down to check who was at the front door. I opened the door, and there were two guys in white vendetta masks holding small plastic bags with very minimal candy inside, it seemed. Neither of the two of them said trick or treat. They just ominously both stood there, and then lifted up their bags and held them open. I said, "Hang on, I'll get more candy." I felt intimidated, if I'm being honest. I went to get the bag of Reese's and grabbed a few to put in their bags. When I dropped the candies in their plastic bags, one of them, I don't know which, asked in a monotone voice, "Are you home alone?" I said no, but with a stutter because the question scared me. I said, "My parents are here." Then I said, "Have a good night," and shut the door. I waited by the door listening to see if I'd hear them walk down the steps.
Scary.
I finally heard footsteps leaving, so I felt relieved and started going back upstairs.
Hopefully.
But that question, "Am I home alone?" kept haunting me. I couldn't just go back to my game after hearing that. And then I realized the possibility as to why they would have asked me that, because there were no cars at all in the driveway or in front of the house, yet the lights were on. Then when I, an at the time 14-year-old kid, opened the door, I probably looked like the easiest target ever. My paranoia was clearly justified though, because while sitting at my desk trying to get back into my game, I heard this loud bang from my window. I was on the second floor, so clearly something was just thrown at the window. My heart started to pound the inside of my chest again. In response, I turned off the computer screen and desk lamp to bring darkness into the room. I then looked out the window, and though I couldn't see anything out there because it was too dark, another object was thrown at the window right in front of me, this one scaring me even more than the last. It sounded like a rock. I instantly felt this intensifying sense of danger. I ducked back down behind the window and left my bedroom. I didn't have a cell phone at the time, only an iPod Touch, so I had to get to the kitchen house phone. I crawled my way down the stairs so not to be seen through any of the windows. I got to the kitchen phone and dialed 911, but I think they saw even just the light from the little screen of the phone, because there was suddenly an aggressive banging on one of the kitchen windows. By now I was on the phone with 911 begging for help. As I crouch-walked out of the kitchen and towards the back door, I screamed, realizing there was one of the guys in the vendetta masks on the other side of the back door, trying to open it. I started screaming into the phone for help, but around the same time, a familiar voice was calling from the other side of the front door. It was our next-door neighbor, Chris. I rushed to answer the door and he came in, clearly happy to see I was okay. He took the phone from me and spoke to the police for me. He saw the 2 masked men enter my backyard from his kitchen window and saw them throwing multiple things at the windows of the house. By the time any police officers arrived at the house, those 2 masked men clearly knew better than to have stuck around. Chris invited me to sleep at his place for the night just to be safe. He was good friends with my dad before he moved, so he really didn't mind helping me. Having good relations with your neighbors may just save your life one day, you never know. What I do know is this experience made me hate Halloween just that much more.
Holy bejeebus. Well, I gotta admit with you, Sonic, that one was a bit scary. See? Do you get what I'm on about now? Well, only just. What do you mean only just? Because I've watched these videos all the time, like once a month when I'm doing the videos, but like pretty much nearly all, like not all the time, but like at least one video a day, at least one of these videos a day. Maybe sometimes I go to sleep with them on. You are a weird child, Calvin. You're a weird head child. Okay, so the next one we'll be reacting to is Vegas Homicide. Was that the one? Wait. Oops. Wait. No, I don't want to. Okay, now Las Vegas. If you don't know, Mr. Nightmare already did a video on Vegas years ago. Like, I think 6 years ago. But he only did one story. I think I've reacted to that in my first few Mr. Nightmare videos, like from last year, but no, like 2019, yeah, 2020, yeah, last year. Alright, let's go have a look. Oh, for God's sake. Shut up.
That's not me.
Nah, you bullshit me, man.
Shut up, come on. Stupid. Fam. Oh,
When it's one of those days,
why does it have to be
don't
adverts I
just
can't
watch it.
skip?
Dettol it.
For God's sake, oh. Ooh, I like the music though. Oh.
This video is a throwback to a video I did over 6 years ago now with a Vegas theme. I've been wanting to do another Vegas themed video for a while, and with one of the biggest music festivals in the US coming up in Vegas this week, this seemed like an appropriate time. But even more appropriately, this video is sponsored by Mobile Premier League. MPL is a play-and-win gaming app with over 80 million users worldwide that can be downloaded for free on iOS devices on the Apple Store and Android devices on the MPL website. You should be 18 years or older before downloading. MPL is filled with a bunch of fun and competitive skill-based games where you can win money while having fun. So now you can relax in the comfort of your own home, making money playing over 10 games that are quite honestly just fun to play, such as Fruit Shop, Bubble Shooter, Bowling, and my current favorite, 21 Puzzle. I like this game because it's similar to Blackjack in that you have to stack one of 4 columns with cards that add up to 21, but if you go higher than 21, you lose one of 3 lives. It's actually a lot harder than it looks, but as you can see, I actually won that round. All of your winnings get added to your wallet, where you can withdraw your money via PayPal or bank account.
Damn.
When you sign up, you'll get a free $5 bonus added to your wallet, and you can also win up to...
Who knew you could win money by playing games? That's definitely not what YouTube's for, innit?
$20 by referring friends and family. This was just one of the many games on the app you can play. So if you want to play fun games and win money, check the link in the description and download MPL.
I didn't think I'd ever seen Mr. Nightmare do those kind of things. Like, do like a little sponsor thing. But not very much.
When my friend Dom turned 21, he organized a group trip to Vegas among our closest friends. We stayed at the Gold Coast Hotel and Casino, which was a 5-minute walk from the Strip. There were 6 of us, too many names to list, so I'll just name them as I go. But we had 3 rooms, and 2 to each room. I was rooming with Joey. Our flight landed around 5, so by the time we were unpacked and settled in the hotel, it was around 7. We stopped at In-N-Out for dinner since we're all from the East Coast, and the novelty of In-N-Out was pretty appealing. Right after that, we walked around until ending up at the Bellagio Hotel's casino. It was absolutely massive. We all kind of split off into little
Sonic.
groups.
It's not,
Joey
it
and I
only
were
just
just doing
started.
slot
Why are you
machines,
scared
while
of
3 of the others were at blackjack tables.
I'm just expecting
I'm
for
not sure
something
what the
to
6th one.
happen.
But when I say Joey and I were doing the slot machines, I mean we were really just sitting there occasionally spinning the slot machine every few minutes. Really just collecting those free shots that the cocktail waitresses would walk around with to try and get the patrons drunker and looser with their money. Let's just say we were trying not to blow $1,000 on the first night. After a few shots, we went over to our friends by the blackjack tables to watch them. I'd say after an hour at the casino watching our friends gamble their money away, we all left with intentions of walking to this place called Lily Bar and Lounge. But halfway to the bar, I did a quick pat down of all my pockets, making sure I had my phone and wallet. Then I had that mini heart attack when I felt an empty pocket where my wallet should have been. I started to freak out, asking my friends if they remember when I had it last. None of them remembered. I asked them to wait for me, while I ran back to the Bellagio to check. They didn't want to wait though. Joey just gave me his room card and told me to check our hotel if it wasn't at the Bellagio. Then the 5 of them continued walking to the bar, while I ran back to the casino of the Bellagio. I felt very defeated, as I was predicting having lost my wallet on the first night, and I would be absolutely screwed if I wanted to get into any bars or clubs. I retraced all my steps in the casino, including checking the seat of the slot machine we were at. Then I checked Lost and Found, but there was nothing. So next I had to try our hotel room. This was my last shot at finding it, and I felt sick to my stomach about it now. I felt this could ruin my entire trip. I ran through the lobby and up the stairs to the 2nd floor where my room was. I got to the door and tried Joey's key card. The card reader flashed red a few times. I wondered if he had a faulty card. I rubbed the card with my shirt to remove any smudges or whatever that could be hindering the card reader. On the next try, it beeped and lit green, and I opened the door. I started searching the entire room, throwing clothes out of my suitcase and onto the bed, digging through my suitcase, then tearing through the bed sheets even though they weren't even slept in yet.
Nope.
I checked under the beds, pillows, on the table and TV stand, but it was not in there. I collapsed on the bed, literally wanting to cry. Then I thought to maybe call the front desk and ask if it was turned into Lost and Found, so I did just that. The desk worker picked up on the 3rd or 4th ring, and I asked if they could check the Lost and Found for my wallet. She said hold on, then put me on hold for a minute. When she came back, she asked what my name was because apparently lots of people lose their wallets in Vegas. I told her my name, then she said something that confused me. She said something along the lines of, "Sir, didn't I speak to you just now at the front desk when you asked me what room number you were in?"
Wait, what?
I asked when she was referring to, and she said within the past 15 minutes. That wasn't possible because I had been gone for nearly 2 hours. I told the lady I was coming down to the front desk, then I hung up. But it made me wonder, just what if? I checked the one closet in the room, and it was empty. Then I looked at the bathroom. The bathroom door was shut. I grabbed the doorknob, sighed, and yanked it open, expecting to see someone. But no, it appeared empty. I turned on the bathroom light just to look at myself in the mirror, but I almost instantly noticed the shadow through the shower curtain. It was undoubtedly a person in there casting that shadow who looked taller than me.
Sonic.
I didn't want to get stabbed or shot that night. I left the hotel room and immediately called the number for the hotel. I asked them to send security up right away. Not even 5 minutes later, 2 large men in security shirts came down the hall and I pointed at the door, yelling there's someone in our bathroom shower who stole my wallet. I opened the door for them, and right center of the hotel room was this 30-something-year-old man with a COVID mask over his mouth. He had his hands in the air. Security guards escorted him out of our room and patted him down for weapons. And not so shockingly, they found my wallet in his pocket. He didn't have any weapons on him though. Security called the police and arrested the man, and I got my wallet back. The man admitted to finding my wallet outside of the hotel, went to the front desk asking what room number I was in, and letting himself in. Even though no one was harmed, I feel like this could have turned out so much worse. For example, if I decided to open that shower curtain. My friends hardly believed my story until security guards backed it up later that night. The rest of the trip went completely normal.
Wait, this story's not me, but Sonic in a better mood, is he? You're fake!
A few years back, I stayed with 3 friends in Bally's Hotel in Vegas, once known as the MGM Grand, until November 21st in 1980, when it burned down. The fire began from a refrigerated pastry display case in one of the restaurants located on the first floor, and apparently the fire engulfed the resort's casino, and the smoke traveled into the hotel tower, killing 85 people due to smoke inhalation. We read about this in some of the reviews of the place while booking. But I mean, that was 40 years ago. How would it really affect our stay? The rates for rooms were surprisingly more affordable than some comparable hotels for that specific weekend. Something I didn't pay attention to in the reviews, though, were the number of people who reported witnessing and hearing strange paranormal events. There are even reports of ghostly activity in the casino. The most common complaint I was seeing from guests was the presence of a smell of smoke and burning, especially on the upper floors, even though there was no one smoking. But I wasn't aware of any of this on our first night there. On our second night there, we went to a couple casinos, then got dinner and went back to the room to regroup before heading back out. Not without stopping at a liquor store for some booze beforehand, so we could all loosen up a little more before going out. After we pre-gamed for a good half hour to an hour, we all called an Uber to Omnia nightclub not too far away. By the time we got there, the liquor was definitely kicking in, and this is where my memory starts getting a little fuzzy. I remember we were waiting online for at least half an hour, and I remember my one friend Alec talking to this group of girls in front of us. Next thing that I really remember was standing at the bar inside the club with my friends, trying to order drinks, and I vaguely remember bits and pieces of being on the dance floor, but when I say I blacked out besides that, I'm not exaggerating. The night became a little clearer when I left the club, but according to my friends, I left alone. I somehow made my way back to the hotel and back to the room on the 17th floor. From here on out, I remember just about everything. I was sitting on the edge of the bed with my head in my hands for quite a while, feeling like my head was spinning, when I heard what sounded to be a kid coughing on the other side of the door. I pulled myself together and went to check through the peephole, making sure no one was choking or anything, I guess. There was no one visible, so I opened the door. The corridor was empty. At this point, standing up made me feel even sicker, so I went to the bathroom to throw up. After that, I felt better and laid down in the bed to go to sleep. It was 3-something in the morning. None of my friends were back yet. I heard the coughing once again. It sounded like a young boy's coughing. I didn't feel like getting up to check again, though. I resumed trying to fall into a deep sleep, when out of nowhere, this ear-piercing ringing went off, along with a flashing red light in the room. It was a smoke alarm, and in the corner of the room, every time that flashing light blinked, I could see a person standing in the corner of the room.
Oh God.
It looked like a young boy facing the door. I looked closer to see if I was seeing things, and on the 4th blink, I started to scream and crawl backwards out of the bed and onto the floor. I don't know what exactly I thought was happening, that I was going to be killed or that I was seeing a ghost. But after a while, as if I were experiencing sleep paralysis or a hallucination, the apparition of the boy in the corner disappeared. I gave myself time to breathe and calm down, and convinced myself I was just seeing things. And just like the boy disappearing, the smoke alarm turned off a minute later. My heart was racing for the next 10 minutes as I sat up in the bed on my phone trying to contact my friends. They got back around 4, and I decided not to tell them for the sake of sounding like a drunk fool. I did more research the next day about the hotel and supernatural sightings, and I was even more disturbed when I read that other people had witnessed and heard a boy coughing on the 17th and 18th floors. Needless to say, I didn't want to stay there anymore. Thank God it was only a 3-night trip.
God damn.
Ancestry
That's
DNA
actually
Festive
creepy.
Edition is the easy way to start
I'm not
discovering
gonna lie
your
to you,
family
that's
story.
creepy. See, now you're getting a bit scared. Not scared as you, Sonic.
In 2018, my friends and I rented an Airbnb in North Vegas to attend the Electric Daisy Festival, which is an EDM music festival. It was my first experience of this kind. I'm not even a fan of EDM, nor do I do any kind of hard drugs. But I went with my 3 friends who are into this stuff, who I'll call Jess, Marissa, and Nicole. My friend Jess had a drug dealer connection in Vegas who she was planning on buying Molly from. The festival starts pretty late in the day and goes all night, so on the first day we were just driving around Vegas trying to find things to do. At some point Jess needed to meet up with her friend to buy the Molly, so while we were eating, she went to pick up from him. Afterwards we went back to the Airbnb to start getting ready for the festival, changing into our outfits. If you know anything about music festivals, girls usually wear the most revealing outfits imaginable. It was new to me. I needed my friends to help me buy an outfit. As we called a lift to the racetrack where the festival was being held, Jess handed us all our own little baggies with the Molly. I was very nervous, as I've never really done any drugs except for weed, if that even counts. The ride there was surprisingly quick. Jess told us the Molly should kick in around 45 minutes after taking it. By then, we were online to get inside. The effects of it didn't really kick in for a while, and my friends all agreed they were already feeling it. So I had a feeling I didn't take enough. I went for the baggie I smuggled into the festival and took a little more. For the next hour, we danced as the sun went down and the sky got darker, and all the lights from the stages and carnival rides lit up the place. I was realizing the Molly was kicking in hard, and I was starting to trip. It was such a surreal experience with all the lights, booming music, and the euphoric feeling of the drug. But eventually I realized I took way too much. I started to lose track of where I was, and next thing I knew, I was lost in the crowd without my friends. At some point this guy started talking to me, and I must have asked him for help finding my friends, because he told me, "I know where your friends are, I'll take you to them." I followed him through the crowd holding his hand, until we got closer to the back of the crowd. I asked where we were going.
Don't, Sonic.
He said he knows where Jess is.
About.
I thought the fact that he knew my friend's name meant he was telling the truth. Then he asked me to call Jess and he'd talk to her, so I dialed Jess's number and handed him the phone. 5 seconds later, he started talking to her. He was on the phone with her for a minute before hanging up. He said Jess left to the hotel with my other friends because one of them got sick. He said he would take me there. I stood there tripping like an idiot and said okay. He called us an Uber, and when we got inside, he asked for my number. I gave it to him because I was yet to see any red flags in my inebriated state, till I looked at the Uber driver's screen and saw that it said the destination was 15 miles away. And then it hit me. Why did the guys say my friends went to the hotel when we weren't staying at a hotel? We were staying at an Airbnb. I asked the driver where we were going, and I don't remember what he said, but whatever he said made me realize he was not taking us to the Airbnb. I asked the driver to turn me around, but the guy next to me started claiming he was my boyfriend and I was just incredibly drunk and needed to get home. I started to scream that he's not my boyfriend, that I just met him, and eventually the driver believed me and stopped the car, kicking the guy out. I started to cry and asked the driver to bring me back to the festival so I could find my friends, but he informed me the festival doesn't allow re-entry, so he brought me back to the Airbnb. He waited until he saw that I let myself in using the code, and then I started frantically texting and calling all my friends, till one of them picked up. They couldn't hear me on the phone at the festival, so I typed in our group chat what happened. Jess came back to the Airbnb to be with me, while Marissa and Nicole stayed till much later at the festival. I somehow slept like a baby that night, but I woke up the next morning to 3 missed calls and a handful of texts from that guy who tried to most likely kidnap me.
Oh my God.
The text went as follows. "Hey, did you make it back? Where are you? I'll come to you and help you to your Airbnb. Honestly, fuck you for making a scene like that in front of the Uber driver, making me look like some kind of rapist." It goes without saying this guy never knew who any of my friends were, and he never got on the phone with Jess. I most likely told him my friend's name when I asked him for help in finding them. This was my first time doing a hard drug, and it blurred my judgment so much that I almost allowed myself to possibly get kidnapped.
Holy bejeebus. Bloody hell. Well, we're 48 minutes in, god damn it. You managed to last for 48 minutes as a Sonic. I think you could manage another, god knows how long the video's actually going to be. Right, let's go watch, we'll watch Mysteries and Halloween and then October Horror Stories, and then we'll watch some older ones. Jesus Christ, it only took a whole hour to get through all this.
Time for some action. Ooh, good choice. Well, no.
Now there's a hack and it's spreading.
And do we know who's behind it?
Not yet, but we're working on it.
We've just lost New York.
Okay, shut up.
Halloween is the one night of the year where being scared is supposed to be good fun. However, amid all the harmless activities like trick-or-treating, sometimes genuinely frightening and disturbing things can happen. This includes some horrific murders and unexplained disappearances, which are far more terrifying than any haunted houses or corn mazes. These are 8 unsolved mysteries and disappearances that happened on Halloween.
Yeah, good. I bet it's not the closest we're even going to get to a
In 2015, 24-year-old Michael Miller and his friends were hosting a Halloween party in the house that they rented together on Halloween night. Michael says they invited around 40 people and told their friends to bring friends, and the crowd that came was actually around 40 people. At Halloween parties, typically people's costumes don't cover their faces unless part of the costume involves a mask or a face covering. But even when a costume will include a mask, usually at least at some point at a party it would be expected for the wearer to take it off just to let their face breathe for a little bit. That's why Michael and his housemates were suspicious when there was one guy in basically regular clothes, but who was wearing a gruesome-looking Halloween mask referred to as an Elephant Man mask.
Yeah.
He was sitting in a chair just seemingly doing nothing, making some of the guests confused and uncomfortable. Nobody knew who it was, so Michael eventually went up to the guy and asked who it was, to which the man replied Billy in a deep voice. Michael said he didn't know any Billy, and asked him to remove his mask for a second. The man refused, so Michael asked the man to leave, and he did. At this same party, 2 girls fell unconscious, likely to being slipped Rufalin, and that man was suspected to be the culprit. Even more, that same Saturday night, 2 neighboring houses were broken into and robbed. That masked man was never identified, and while it's not 100% certain that he was responsible for slipping something in anybody's drinks or for the nearby break-ins, it would be a fairly safe assumption.
Goddamn.
Cindy Song was a 21-year-old South Korean student attending Penn State University. In 2001, she dressed up in a bunny costume and attended a Halloween party at a nightclub near the college. She stayed at the club until around 2 a.m., then left for her friend's apartment where she spent the next few hours hanging out with her friends. She was then dropped off at her apartment at 4 a.m., and this was the last anybody ever saw of her. After Cindy was reported missing, a search of her apartment yielded no signs of a struggle or foul play. Police knew she had made it inside because her fake eyelashes and the backpack that she'd worn to the party were found inside the apartment, as well as her cell phone. The only things missing were her purse and wallet, suggesting that she'd possibly went out again. Her credit card showed no activity after her disappearance, and neither the authorities nor her family believed that she vanished willingly. However, after her disappearance, a witness reported seeing a man resembling Cindy in the Chinatown district of Philadelphia. She was inside a vehicle with an unidentified male and appeared to be crying for help. In 2003, a man named Hugo Marcus Selinsky was arrested after the remains of 5 people were found buried in his backyard. Selinsky told police that he and another man, Michael Kurkowski Jr., abducted Cindy off the street and kept her imprisoned in his walk-in safe until she perished, and then buried her on the property. However, none of the remains discovered could be identified as Cindy, and the only person who could confirm this was Kurkowski, but his body was one of the many buried on Selinsky's land. The case remains open to this day, and no evidence exists to link Selinsky.
Oh my god.
On Halloween night in 2002, 21-year-old University of Minnesota student Chris Jenkins and some of his friends visited a keg party before going to a place called the Lone Tree Bar and Grill. The bar was in downtown Minneapolis, where Chris was attending school. The group arrived around 10:30 p.m., but around an hour and a half later, Chris was removed from the bar by security for reportedly being too drunk, and he was banned from returning. Chris was left out in the cold. It was as low as 20 degrees Fahrenheit that night, and he was only wearing his costume, which consisted of Native American attire, and he was without his wallet, cell phone, or keys. From this point, he vanished without a trace. The area around the bar he was kicked out from was not considered safe, with a very high crime rate, and it was definitely not an ideal place to be roaming around at night alone and intoxicated. When no word was heard from Chris, his family hired a private investigator who was later told by witnesses that on that same night that Chris went missing, a large group of men attacked a lone person, presumed to be some kind of gang initiation, just across the street from the bar where Chris was last seen. If that wasn't enough concerning news for the family, 2 scent tracking dogs on separate days picked up Chris's trail on the sidewalk where the attack was alleged to have taken place and followed it to the same spot inside the parking garage next door, where a few drops of blood and a single red feather were found, a feather that clearly belonged to the costume Chris was wearing. Strangely, that's where the trail ended. Chris wasn't found until 4 months later, when his body was found floating in the Mississippi River, a victim of what was originally believed to be either a suicide or an accidental drowning. But further investigation caused the medical examiner to change the official cause of death from accidental drowning to homicide.
Oh my god.
This one was sent to me back in 2015. In 2007, a 12-year-old boy named Bradley was trick-or-treating with a group of friends.
He's actually good, you know.
The boys who were with Bradley early on in the night said that they were just going along with their trick-or-treating,
say that, Sonic.
and one of the boys picked up on the fact that Bradley was missing. They retraced their steps in an attempt to find him and disturbingly found his cowboy hat sitting by the curb. Bradley was dressed in a homemade cowboy costume that day. A little ways up the road, Bradley's bag of candy was found as well, spilled out onto the street, almost leaving a trail. That was the last of Bradley's possessions that were found by the boys that night. It's unknown how Bradley disappeared without anyone noticing, but the most likely explanation would have to be that Bradley at some point wandered off on his own, leaving him vulnerable to predators on their favorite night of the year. But the only thing that may take away some credibility of that possibility would be the fact that a week later, Bradley's mother found his glasses in the backyard. The strange part was that Bradley's friends all said he was wearing glasses the last time they saw him, indicating he may have went back home in between the period that he went missing. No information was followed up with since. David Stone was a successful stock market analyst, making good money and a stable career, described by friends and family as a bright, sharp young man. However, a few days before Halloween of 1988, he left his home.
Bye everyone, welcome back to the video. Don't know what the frick just happened there, but video just connected. Recording just stopped, so right, let's get back into the video.
A heated argument with a party guest turned violent. This was strange because anyone close to him would say he's the least violent person they knew. A few people reported seeing David sitting next to his car on a highway, until he apparently set off on foot into the desert. He was spotted by witnesses several times that day, including a farmer who found him wandering around on his property severely underdressed for the cold weather. He was apparently muttering something about being in search of the beast before vanishing for good. He was last seen on Halloween Day. His car was found on November 5th off the same highway. Search teams headed north from the location of the car and found two pyramids made out of rocks and surrounded by a triangle, with David's Rolex lying next to one of them. 3 miles further north, they found a Fibonacci sequence, which is a number pattern used in stock analysis, etched into the soil. Bloodhounds were able to track David's scent along the highway 13 miles north from where his car was abandoned, but the trail went cold. His family found a riddle-like note inside his vehicle that read, "They think the word is in the safe. 6 knives in Rob's room. Use buy your tea and use take your chances Halloween." Use buy your teas and take your chances is a play on an old saying about stocks and gambling. And in the New Age movement, having 6 knives in your house would mean a regretful yet necessary rite of passage. 2 hikers found David Stone's remains in the desert in 1992. 4 years after he went missing. Despite having no idea what caused his erratic behavior or how and why he died, there was no sign of any foul play.
Oh my god.
In 1981, a Manhattan couple named Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman were murdered in their Greenwich Village apartment in the late hours of the night. The two were brutally beaten before being shot in the head, and the apartment was completely ransacked. Sisman, the boyfriend, was allegedly involved in drugs, so it was initially thought that that may have been a possible motive for the killings. However, the case took a bizarre turn when a prison informant claimed that one of his fellow inmates had somehow predicted the crimes weeks before it actually happened. That inmate was the son of Sam killer David Berkowitz, an American serial killer who pleaded guilty to 8 shootings that began in New York in 1976. There's even speculation that Berkowitz was involved with a satanic cult and didn't commit all those murders on his own. According to the informant, Berkowitz told him that his alleged cult was planning to break into an apartment in Greenwich Village on Halloween night and perform a ritual murder by shooting a couple in the head before ransacking the place to remove incriminating evidence. This description matched exactly what went down in their apartment. When questioned, Berkowitz claimed that Ronald Sisman possessed snuff footage of one of the Son of Sam shootings and was planning to hand it over to the authorities to avoid some drug charges. But to this day, no evidence was found to support Berkowitz's claims. Therefore, no one knows if the murders of Ronald and Elizabeth had anything to do with the Son of Sam case. It was Halloween night of 1996 when 40-year-old Veronica Safransky of Argyle, Minnesota went missing. Veronica attended a Halloween costume party with a friend at Mick's Bar and Grill in Warren, Minnesota a few nights before Halloween. Veronica's friend was unable to locate her inside the bar around midnight. However, witnesses told authorities that Veronica was seen with a man named Kevin Skirvin leaving the bar together. They left the venue in his black pickup truck with Oregon license plates. This was the last moment Veronica was seen. She was reported as a missing person later the next day, and later that year, a belt believed to be part of her costume was found along a country road not far away. An extensive search of the area didn't yield any evidence as to where she could be. Kevin Skirvin, the man she was seen leaving the bar with, had a history of sexual assault convictions, and he admitted to departing Mick's Bar and Grill with Veronica, but claimed that he did not know what happened to her afterwards. He had never been charged in connection with her disappearance. Authorities have said that there are many wooded areas in Marshall County where Veronica's remains could be easily concealed. In fact, at the start of each hunting season, the sheriff asks local hunters to be on the lookout when traversing the wooded lands, as her body has still yet to be located. Her case remains unsolved. On Halloween in 1955, Marilyn DeMond took her 2-year-old son Stephen and 7-month-old daughter Pamela to a bakery in East Meadow, New York. While she was inside the bakery, Marilyn irresponsibly left Stephen and his sister, who was inside a carriage, to wait outside the front. When she left the bakery 10 minutes later, she was mortified to discover that both Stephen and the carriage were gone. Shortly thereafter, the carriage with Pamela still inside was discovered about 1.5 blocks away. However, Stephen was nowhere to be found. He has not been seen since. In many cases where infants are abducted, it's theorized that the perpetrator wanted a child of their own and decided to raise the missing infant under a new name. Over the years, DNA testing has been utilized in an attempt to determine if Stephen DeMond was ever given a new identity. At one point, investigators noticed that Stephen bore a resemblance to the infamous boy in the box, an unidentified child who was found murdered inside a cardboard box in Philadelphia in 1957. However, after DNA testing, all indications were that the boy in the box was not Stephen DeMond. In 2009, a Michigan man named John Barnes came forward, believing he might be Stephen, but some DNA testing also ruled this out. It's possible that an adult Stephen DeMond might be living another life somewhere under a different identity, unaware that he was once taken from his real family. It may also be a possibility that Stephen was murdered long ago, and his body was never found. Either way, his current whereabouts, dead or alive, continue to remain unknown, and at this point, will probably never be known.
Bloody hell. Yeah, sorry about the video just cutting off for some reason. I don't know why that happened, but you know, bloody rat top in it. But, yes, what do you think? What else, Sonic? It was good, and, you know what I'm going to say next? Terrifying. Well, I do got to admit you, some of these were scary. So yeah, the last new video to watch is the 3 Disturbing True October Stories. Oh,
Okay, so what the hell is error? Basically, it's a water bottle that collides with...
There you go.
In late October, my girlfriend Stacy and I took a road trip to Stowe, Vermont. We rented a cabin on the website Glamming Hub, only about a 20-minute ride from the village. It was on a nice hilltop with a view of the fall foliage, which was just the reason why we took this trip. We had the rental from Thursday night to Sunday. The cabin had a code lock system. The owner sent me the combination before we arrived, and it worked seamlessly. Stepping in, we looked around the place, and it was nice and cozy. Literally everything was made of wood, and it had this very old-fashioned country feel. It even had this distinct smell that just reminded us of, well, I guess a country log cabin. There was a bathroom, a small kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a living room. It was plenty of space for the 2 of us. There were 2 TVs, one in the master bedroom and one in the living room. There was this other door that was locked though, which we presumed led to the 3rd bedroom that was listed on the ad. Though we didn't know why it would be locked, it wasn't a big deal at all, and we presumed the owner had some personal stuff in there. Plus, he knew it would only be us 2. We put most of our luggage in the 2nd bedroom so that we could leave the master bedroom nice and neat. Since we arrived pretty late on Thursday, we went straight out to dinner in town. Then we walked around the village for a little bit before returning to the cabin. By then it was late, so we called it a night after a movie. The next day was a cloudy, chilly one. We went out to hike along some dirt trails in the woods near the cabin, which was very peaceful. Upon returning to the cabin, I showered and changed out of my hiking attire and into more appropriate attire for hitting a nice restaurant. When I got out from the shower, Stacy told me she heard something in the bedroom with a locked door. She said it sounded like a radio or recording. I went up to the door and put my ear up on it to try and listen, but it was silent on the other side. I knocked on the door to the dismay of Stacy. She told me to stop because the idea of me knocking on the door trying to see if someone was in there freaked her out. To be honest, I slightly did it for that reason, just to tease her. While Stacy was in the shower, I was sitting in the living room watching whatever I could find on the
calm
TV.
down.
That's when I thought, just barely, I heard the slightest sound from inside that room. I muted the TV and went to put my ear over the door again. I did hear this slight speaking noise, like it could be from a radio. I messaged and then called the host and told him about it. He said he wasn't sure why his wife would have locked the door, but that she may have left some of her stuff in there. He said as for the speaker noise, he'd have to ask his wife. Stacy and I went out for lunch after her shower. I didn't tell her about hearing the noise as well because I didn't want to creep her out. It was obvious to me the guy's wife just left an electronic device in there or something. We went to this restaurant on Main Street in town called Harrison's. After that, we just took a drive around the area, then stopped at a park and relaxed for a bit. That's when the host called me and said that his wife told him she didn't lock anything in there, so he's not sure why that is or what we could be hearing. He offered to come by and unlock the door and check it out, to which I said sure. So with that, we headed back to the house. It was about a 20-minute drive back. When we got back, Stacy let herself in and collapsed on the couch, tired from, I guess, eating and walking around. I listened into the room again, and I still heard the same sounds from before. I said, hang on, I'll be right back to Stacy, as I walked outside. I didn't know why I didn't think of doing this sooner. I went to the window to the bedroom with the locked door. There were no curtains or anything blocking the view inside. As I stood on my tiptoes to look into the room, I was horrified. I saw this grossly skinny, tall, 20-something-year-old guy in a hood, dancing slowly in the center of the room.
The frick?
He had what looked to be a small radio in his hand. He noticed me quickly at the window, and he stopped and looked at me, smiling. I started screaming Stacy's name, yelling, "Get out of the house." She met me at the door, panicked and confused. I told her just get in the car.
Get in the damn
I grabbed
car.
our 2 bags, leaving whatever stray items behind, and threw them in the trunk, driving off. I then called the host and told him to call the cops because someone was in the house. An hour later, while we were sitting in town, I got a call back from the host who said police arrived and the 3rd bedroom was opened and no one was in there. However, they found multiple empty bags of chips under the bed, implying someone was in fact in there. We went back to collect our remaining belongings and worked out a refund between the host and the website. Of course, we didn't stay there after that. We went to a nearby motel and stayed till Sunday, then we went home. I'll tell you though, what I saw through that window, that dancing skinny figure, I couldn't sleep for nights, especially with the thought that he was in there the entire time we were, even while we were asleep.
Oh my god. Stupid old. Turn off all ads. I wish I could get rid of all turn off all annotations.
It happened after a long Friday night halfway through October. A rainy one, and drinks were involved. I was at this Halloween-themed housewarming party with all my friends. I didn't wear a costume because I came straight from work already pretty exhausted. I took an Adderall to wake myself up before going, and I stopped at a gas station to pick up some White Claws. There were a decent amount of people there, I'd say 25 to 30. I had to meet a few people that I'd never met before. All this socializing and drinking was keeping me awake, but deep down I kind of wanted to just get home and go to bed. Working in a hospital means I get crazy hours and my sleep schedule is all over the place. I eventually saw a good opportunity to do an Irish goodbye through the backyard. I didn't even really have it in me to say goodbye to 20 people. I really shouldn't have driven home with alcohol in my system, and I don't recommend anybody ever do that. Always call an Uber. I ran through the rain and got in my Subaru and just started to drive. No music on. I wasn't in the mood. I just wanted peace and quiet, to listen to the rain hitting the windshield. Then, driving down some quiet residential road, I spotted a girl walking in the rain. No umbrella, no jacket, nothing. She stopped walking and looked at my car as I drove nearer to her. I definitely let out a sigh as I contemplated whether I should just keep going or not, and my more compassionate side told me to pull over. I rolled down my window and asked if she needed a ride. Without answering, she got in the back seat of my car. I asked her where she was going. She said just down to the end of this road, so that's where I took her. As I stopped at the second stop sign, I asked her why she's out in the rain. She said she was just in a hurry back and didn't want to call a cab. I said that's understandable, making a joke about how expensive cabs and Ubers are. I introduced myself as Jake, and she said, "Allie, thanks for picking me up." After that, no more words were exchanged. I continued down the street until I saw a dead-end sign approaching. I stopped at the final sign, then asked, "Is it past the dead-end sign?" She didn't answer. As I was halfway through that little intersection, I looked in the rearview mirror, and my heart sank. She wasn't in the reflection.
Jesus Christ, man. God, yeah, you're more scared something than what I was. Jesus Christ.
I stopped on the brake and turned around. She wasn't in the back seat. I quickly pulled to the side of the road and got out. I hurried to check the entire back seat row. She wasn't there. Not on the seat, not on the floor. I looked down the empty road, lit up only by the occasional street light. There was no one in sight. But there was no possible way she even got out from the car, as I had not once heard the door either opening or closing, and there's no possible way she just snuck out from the car unheard. I was starting to question my sanity. I started feeling around the seat and floor where she sat. It was completely dry. It would have had to have been somewhat wet from her after being in the rain. I stood there in the rain, dumbfounded, confused, and scared. I looked around me again, and then I realized to the right of the car, right next to where I pulled over, was a fence, and beyond that fence was a cemetery. And her response to my question moments before dawned on me when I asked her, "Where are you going?" And she said, "Down to the end of this road." I looked at the cemetery, which was at the end of the road. Then I got back in my car and did a 3-point turn and hurried home. I don't think I was anywhere near drunk enough to be hallucinating shit.
God damn!
When it comes to looks, I feel like a lot of times it starts with your hair. People want thicker hair, they want shiny.
Quiet. Okay, one last story, and then we can watch some older ones.
Last October, my friends and I went to a haunted corn maze in Oak Hill, Ohio. It was supposed to be the best corn maze in our area. I want to leave the name out just out of respect for the family that runs it. I was with my friends Joe, Carl, and Cody. We always do haunted house type stuff every October. On the line to get into the attraction, we overheard some kids saying how last year the maze had to shut down for a night. Some kid was actually hurt by one of the workers.
It's you after the video. Well, you do have a point about that, to be honest. Let's get this all over with.
Joined in on the conversation, and apparently someone dressed in one of the costumes actually pushed one of the customers, and they had to close for the night. I guess that added a little bit to the nerves, like that maybe we'd feel like the costume actors would actually go above and beyond just the typical jump scares. Once we got in, it felt like a normal corn maze. It started slow, then, the occasional actors would jump out from behind a corner or out of the crops. There were multiple speakers tucked away in the background, blasting spooky sound effects to add to the ambiance, and it overall was just littered with Halloween decorations and props everywhere. We came to this little split. There were 2 directions we could go, left and right, and there was a sign in the middle with 2 arrows. Left side said, "This way to safety," and the right side said, "Danger, keep out." So 2 and 2, we decided to split up. Cody and I went to the left, the safety side. As we walked, we expected it to be the opposite of safety, that this side would probably be the scarier side or have more jump scares. Well, turns out that was right. Kind of. We turned this corner, and there was this guy in a costume just standing there holding a pumpkin. The costume was very bizarre. It was an all-black outfit with this weird blank mask over his face. It was a complete pullover mask, but it only had 2 eye holes. No mouth hole, not even holes for the nose. He didn't jump out or make any screaming noises. He just walked up to us holding up the pumpkin, motioning for us to take it. We kinda just laughed, thinking it was part of the gimmick. Then, in a deep, raspy voice, almost like how Batman speaks in the Dark Knight movies, like he were masking his voice, he said, "Take it, please." We looked at him continuing to laugh while moving forward, and he started to follow us, repeating himself over and over, saying, "Take it." Eventually it seemed like it was getting a little stale though, like the joke was over and he should have stopped and went back to his spot. But he kept following us for over a minute. He kept saying, "Take it, take it," his tone getting angrier sounding. Then he said, "Take it or I'll kill you." Now, I didn't take that seriously, obviously, given that we were in a corn maze, but I did find it to be a little aggressive of a line. I took the pumpkin from him, and he seemed to stop following us. We continued walking until we bumped into Joe and Carl again at the point where the 2 separate paths merged, and they both laughed, asking why I was holding a pumpkin. I explained. Everyone agreed I should just take the pumpkin home with me at this point. Anyway, continuing on through the corn maze, it was a pretty traditional standard attraction after that. At one point though, one of the actors actually broke character and came up to me and said I can't steal the pumpkin. I told him one of the workers gave it to me, and he asked which one. I said the guy in the black with the white blank mask. He seemed confused and asked where the worker was. I told him on the left side of the fork in the path. He then walked in that direction, not saying anything. We all thought it was really weird and took us out of the immersion a little bit. Quickly after that, we made it to the end, and it was only then, when there was enough light, that I realized the pumpkin was carved on the inside, and the top of it was cut. I grabbed it by the stem and pulled off the top, expecting something to be in there. And oh, there was. On the bottom of the inside of the pumpkin. At first I didn't know what they were. To be honest, I thought they were some kind of food, till I picked one up. I realized it was a severed human finger, a very real one, and there were probably 9 more in there. On the side of the pumpkin was a pair of eyes drawn in black Sharpie, and under them said, "Always watching," with a smiley face next to it. My friends and I screamed and freaked out, and we ran to the nearest worker. She didn't know what to do either, as she was just as young as us. She called for one of her superiors, and he called the police. The whole attraction was shut down as police came and basically listened to our story. We stayed on the premises while police searched the place, but it was basically in the middle of nowhere, so he could have been anywhere. The police took the appendages for, I'm assuming, forensic analysis. I don't think a body was ever found to match the fingers. We left that place unharmed that night, but not without a permanently traumatizing experience.
Oh my god. You got that right. Jesus Christ, Sonic. What the hell was that? That actually got me a bit scared, to be fair. Right. Let's head back to... No. Right, let's head back. Shut up. Right. So, yeah, we've reacted to all the new stories there is. There's only 5 at the moment, but in the next episode there should hopefully be another one. Okay, so we're going to go with oldest. We're going to go to oldest and watch some older videos, because why the flip not? So we're going to watch the first ever Mr. Nightmare video. So, maybe a bit, it might not be as good as, like, the ones we just watched, but, you know, this was 6 years ago, so...
What will you design today?
Creepy ass horror stories.
Start designing for free.
But it's not very long, because I think it's like about 8 minutes.
Number 5.
Jesus
Last
Christ.
night, a friend rushed me out of the house to catch the opening act at a local bar's music night. After a few drinks, I realized my phone wasn't in my pocket. I checked the table we were sitting at the bar, the bathrooms, and after no luck, I used my friend's phone to call mine. After 2 rings, someone answered, gave out a low, raspy giggle, and hung up. They didn't answer again. I eventually gave it up as a lost cause and headed home. I found my phone laying on my nightstand, right where I left it. Number 4. When I was a kid, I was always the last kid to get picked up by the bus driver to go to school. One day I was waiting for the bus by myself, and a bus with no kids pulled up. The bus driver smiled and told me to hop on. I just had a bad feeling. I said, "Where are the other kids?" He said, "We will go get them now. Just get on." He got more and more pushy, but didn't do anything crazy. I just kept saying no, and he shrugged and left. The real bus pulled up a few minutes later. I went to school and my parents didn't know until I mentioned it that night. Looking back, they were pretty worried. I remember them scrambling to make a few phone calls. Number 3. A few years back, I rented an apartment from a friend of mine. He had recently bought it and had it completely renovated.
Sonic, it's a woman.
He put it up for sale but couldn't find a buyer, so I offered to rent it in the meantime. After moving in, I realized there was something wrong with the lady next door. She was about 45 but looked much older. She would sit up all night listening to Christian radio shows and talking loudly to someone. It got to the point where I couldn't sleep, so I went over to her place and asked her to keep it down. She opened the door and I got a quick peek. Her walls all had crosses painted on them in different colors, and words like Jesus and angels scribbled everywhere. The windows were painted black, letting no light in at all. It was damp, yellow-stained 50-year-old carpets, dog shit, and cockroaches everywhere.
Yeah.
No dog, though. I asked her to please keep it down. She just looked at me and shut the door. Then she turned up the radio even louder. The next night I had my girlfriend staying over. I wake up in the middle of the night and see a shadow of a person next to the bed, looking at us sleeping. I think I'm hallucinating, as I usually do in the dark when I'm sleepy. But then, the shadow starts talking. It's my neighbor, and she's holding something in her hand. She broke in during the night, and who knows how long she stood there.
Oh, Jesus.
You should lock your doors at night, she says, and walks out. The next morning, I hear someone making strange noises below my bedroom window. It's my neighbor talking to herself in tongues.
It's the bloody neighbor.
She has a plastic bag in her hand with her rotting dead dog inside. It's hot as hell outside and I can smell death from that bag. At this point I'm scared shitless. She's obviously very insane. I go upstairs and knock on another person's door and ask them what the hell is going on. The guy is as scared as me. Apparently she broke into his apartment one evening as well while he was watching TV with his kids. He got up from the couch to get a snack, only to find her behind the couch, staring at him, holding a power drill.
A power drill?
Come to think about it, now I know what was in her hand. At this stage, I'm basically shitting myself. I call the cops and they know all about her. Apparently she's a violent schizophrenic and she hasn't taken her meds, but they can't force her or enter her apartment without her permission because she owns it. The only thing they can do is get her when she goes outside. I sit up for the next 2 days, waiting for her to run out of cigarettes. When I hear her leave at 2 AM to go across the road to the 7-Eleven, I call the cops. They have 3 cars and a special van over in less than 2 minutes. They restrain her and throw her in the van and drive off to some institution, and in less than a minute, it's like she was never there. I never see her again. Still have nightmares about her looking at me in my sleep.
Who knew that
Number
one
2.
person can do that much to a person?
I was about 15 minutes from finishing the night shift at work when there was a massive crash on one of the windows in the office, so I get up and go check it out. Someone has thrown quite a sizable rock through one of the windows on the front of the building. This is made especially weird because I'm working in the industrial district at 11:30 at night with none of the other businesses open. I go back to my desk, put a quick call through to security to let them know, and decide to head home. As I'm leaving the building, I'm freaking myself out about it more and more and end up running to my car, getting in and taking off. I'm almost home and I've started to calm down a bit when I realize that I didn't unlock my car when I got in. It had been unlocked the whole time. I do a quick check with my hand in the back seat for any possible murderers that might be hanging around there, but there's nothing there. Fast forward about 30 minutes. I've called a friend of mine who says he's out drinking, so I decide I'm going to join him. I jump on my bicycle and start riding over. I'm doodling along the road on my bike. It's a nice night and I'm in no big rush, just enjoying the moonlight when I hear someone riding behind me. I straighten up and stick to one side of the road. He passes me really slowly, and when he's right beside me, he shoots me a smile, and I can describe it as purely insane. I kind of flinch and am taken aback as he rides on. That's when I realize he's riding my mom's bike. Needless to say, I sprint the hell home. When I get there, sure enough, her bike is missing and one of my car's doors is open. The back left one. I was driving and had no need to open that door.
Sonic, calm down. Calm down.
Number 1. I worked at a campground on night shift, 12 AM to 8 AM every night. It wasn't bad. I would bring in my PS2 and game a good portion of the night, only having to deal with 1 or 2 people on busy nights. It was just me in this little 8-foot by 8-foot shack, with nothing around but dark all night. My first week there, the other third shift guy who was quitting told me about this payphone a few feet from the shack where I worked. He said it rang every night at 4:17 AM, just once. It was probably just an automated test call, he guessed. He's never answered it himself. I go for a few months with the job. It was the middle of the summer, so most nights I had the windows closed, so I couldn't hear the payphone go off. Mid-August, I started leaving the windows open during the night. Sure enough, at 4:17 AM every morning, the phone would ring once. The ring even sounded creepy, like the payphone was submerged in water and then put where it sat. One night I got up the nerve to answer it. I set an alarm at 4:15 and would go wait at the phone until it rang. When it did, I answered it, but there was no sound, just dead air like someone was on the other line but wasn't answering. I said hello a few times and hung up. I did this every night for a week with the same results. I didn't think anything of it and left it alone after that for about a month. The first week of October, I decided to answer the phone once again. I set my alarm and when the time came, I answered the phone. I repeatedly said hello into the phone.
Hello.
Then I heard what sounded like someone inhaling through clenched teeth.
Oh, jeez.
The voice that sounded was rough and sounded like he had gargled gravel. He said my name. My complete name. First, middle, and last.
Oh, God.
It was a voice I've never heard.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
My voice caught in my throat and I hung up. I rattled some change into the payphone and hit star 69. The number had come from California. I lived in Indiana.
See, that was Mr. Nightmare's first ever video. Bloody hell. You know how... No. I swear, it was a... I'm not saying his news stories aren't creepy enough, but they did give me... some of those stories that was in that video gave me quite a few chills. Okay, we're gonna watch... I'm gonna watch... In either the next episode or the episode after, I'm gonna watch these 10 really true disturbing horror stories. Like, there's like... Volumes means parts. The volume means parts. Like part 1, part 2. But that's just how horror story people do it. But I'm just going to watch them as shorter ones. And some of these ones over here. This video won't be as long as like some of the past ones. Well, hopefully not. Well, not as long as the last one at least. But, you know. We're going to keep on going until I eventually die. But, you know. Let's watch freaky video clip found footage. Are you ready, Sonic? Yeah. Let's get the show on the road.
Introducing SanDisk Professional, premium pro-grade storage solutions.
Yeah, let's do this. Get on the show on the road. No, it's long. It's the last one. I'm watching it like mid-afternoon, so that's how we look. Trip 3.
Se jævla mørkt det. Jeg ser jo ikke noen ting. Hva er ikke på lysene? Så du hvor det ble, eller?
Does he even speak in this one? I don't actually know, Colin. Oh, I know. Oh, this won't be a good one to watch. 5 first-hand stories when nightmares turn to reality. Yeah, we'll watch that one after this. Because I've seen that video, but not in a while. Not in a long time. Yeah.
Det er faen meg overalt.
No, sweet. Go for it. What the hell? No, fuck that. I'm moving on. I can't.
If you're like most,
I can't. I'm not. Sonic, what are you doing, big man? We can watch that in another video. Alright.
If you're like most people, you've probably at one point had the experience of your alarm clock becoming a part of your dream before waking up. Or perhaps had some other sound, like the TV you left on before falling asleep, influence your dreams. But what would happen if reality influenced your dreams during a nightmare? Well, it would probably only add to the horror. While all of the stories on this list are creepy, some are more unexplainable than others. Here are 5 first-hand stories of people whose nightmares have strangely read into reality. Number 5. This story was submitted to me by Earl Feinhardt. It was a long and stressful day, so falling asleep was easy. I think a dream started to fade in around halfway through the night. It wasn't a pleasant dream. I'll try to describe it the best I could. I was in the woods outside of a giant castle. Everything was black except for the night sky, which had a hint of blue. I remember this horrifying sound coming from inside the castle, as if something were calling me. It's downright disturbing to think about it even now. The sound was some kind of demonic, hellish voice, and it echoed through the woods. I somehow knew it was coming from inside the castle, and yet it sounded as if the source of the sound was a few hundred feet away from me. This was not a lucid dream. I had no conscious control over myself, so I made my way to the castle. There were no doors. It was as if the inside of this castle was also the outside. I don't know how else to describe it.
Hey?
The sound of the demonic voice was no doubt getting louder, and as I walked the open corridors of the castle, the halls started to become more narrow, and I felt myself banging into the walls as I dragged myself along. The sounds of the screaming were coming from beyond a door on my left. I entered, and I swear to God, there was nothing but blackness in the room. And yet, I still felt myself moving closer to the sound. I banged into something, and that's when I woke up, hunched over my 4-year-old son's bed, who was crying and horrified. He had been screaming because he also had a nightmare, and I scared him even more, as he described the way I walked in and then stopped in front of his bed, slowly lowering myself closer to him. Number 4.
God dang! What the frick? Damn, I've not seen this video in ages. No, because I don't know if I've watched this video on a Missing Nightmare video before, but I've not seen this video personally in ages, so I can't actually remember any of the stuff that's happened in this video, because with the other ones, especially like the ones, like the 5, like the October ones, the October Horror Stories, Las Vegas, the motel, and trick or treating and that, and also Halloween mysteries, I had a fresh idea of what they were in my head because I watched them the day they came out, and obviously those 5 videos span across a month. So, yeah.
This story was posted by a forum user named Joey Mancuso. I just want to point out before sharing my story that I am an atheist and do not believe in any kinds of miracles, gods, or anything of that sort. However, I still don't know how to explain this. I was having a really disturbing dream. It seemed to be Halloween night, and I was with my friends trick-or-treating. We hit 2 houses. The first one was normal from what I remember. When we rang the doorbell to a second house, the door opened on its own into a darkish blue living room. I stepped inside, and my friends were gone at this point. I looked around the room I was in. The door I had just entered from no longer existed. In fact, the whole room seemed to have rapidly changed appearance, a common occurrence in dreams. After exploring the house, I came to a room upstairs, even though I didn't remember climbing the stairs. On the wall I was facing was a giant framed picture, I mean at least 10 meters long and 20 meters wide. The picture was of my 30-year-old cousin, who I hadn't seen in years.
Oh my god, oh my god.
Her eyes were enlarged to an uncomfortable amount, and they followed me everywhere I went. The giant portrait suddenly cracked, and the rusty, scratchy, ear-piercing sound of the giant nails holding the portrait on the wall painfully filled my eardrums. The portrait started to fall off the wall, and I watched, completely frozen, as it fell on top of me. But before it could crush me, I was awake. It was maybe 5 in the morning. Minutes after waking up, my cell phone rang. I picked up. It was my uncle, calling to tell me that my cousin had just overdosed on heroin and died.
Wait, what? Holy my jeebus! Jesus Christ! Oh my god. You got that right, Sonic.
Challenge your taste. Pepsi Max.
Who the frick is that face?
No sugar.
Number 3.
Oh dear.
I was having a nightmare that started off with me in my house reading a newspaper. Then the lights went out, and the dream started to focus on my trying to find out why the power was cut. The fuse box was apparently in the basement in this dream, which is by the way inaccurate to real life. I went down to the basement with a flashlight and opened up the fuse box. There was a sticky note inside, saying, "Go back upstairs to the red room." While still in the basement, I started to hear a moaning type sound coming from the boiler room / laundry room. My brain knew my childhood fears, and it seemed to be taking advantage of them in this nightmare. The door to the boiler room cracked open, and something poked its head out to look at me. I left the basement after seeing this, following the sticky note's orders. I went upstairs to the second floor of the house, and there was a glowing red door at the end of the hall, a door that doesn't actually exist in my real house. Now, there was a disturbing echoing sound coming from beyond the door, and as I got closer, it became more clear that it was a voice, chanting the number 314. 314. I opened the door, and there was just a chair in the room, facing the wall across from me. The room was as red as the glow that had been illuminating through the door. The voice chanting 314 was clearer now. It was an extremely creepy voice, almost feeling like it was speaking into my ear.
Oh god, no.
I woke up abruptly, with my heart beating somewhat quickly. I grabbed my iPhone that was sitting on the desk next to me to check the time. It was 3:14 a.m. You may think I just saw a clock while half awake or something, but I have no digital clocks in my room. The only clock would be the one on my iPhone that was in the same position as I had left it before going to bed. To this day, I have no idea how my dream knew it was 3:14, or if there was supposed to be some kind of meaning behind it. Number 2.
Oh my god, this is actually a gem of a video that needs to get more views. Jesus Christ, I hope he does more, like. I know he's not done, I don't think he's done anything since, like, Nightmare related since this video, but, you know. Be cool to see one.
This one was from an Ask Reddit post. It was a night during the summer, 2015. I was high out of my mind after a party. I was fortunate enough to not get caught by my parents as I walked to my room to get straight to bed. I was at the part of my high where I was just exhausted and wanted to get some sleep, and so I fell asleep in probably 10 minutes or less. Have you ever heard about that idea that smoking pot and then going to sleep high alters your dreams or gives you some kind of enhanced dreaming capabilities? Well, after this one, I won't be fighting that theory. I don't remember anything before this dream. It started out with me in the woods in the middle of the night. In real life, you would just be surrounded by trees and the sounds of night critters, nothing special. But being that this was a dream, it was much worse. There were ghostly wind sounds coming from everywhere. Instead of bug noises, there were wolf howls and sounds of footsteps coming from behind me.
Oh god, no.
There was that magically horrifying feeling of a dream that you just can't describe, but it made it so much more than just being trapped in the woods. I found myself running away from the footsteps that were consistently the same distance behind me until reaching a building in the middle of the woods. Of course, I went inside and boarded the door shut with planks that seemed to have come out of nowhere. This dream seemed to have gone on forever, too long to describe it all, but to summarize, I was in that building, which turned out to be a house, and the footsteps that were following me from outside were circling the house. I tried to find a weapon, but the house was almost completely empty. Everything was black and white at this point. While sitting on a couch in the living room, one of the only pieces of furniture there was a shadow that appeared at the window, and shortly after, the figure standing outside knocked on the window. It kept knocking and knocking until I woke up, but the knocking didn't stop. I jumped out of bed when I realized someone was at my window, looking in and knocking. I squealed for my dad, and the figure at the window ran off. I'm still open to the possibility that my high hadn't completely worn off, and that it might have been a partial wake-up hallucination, but it was also so real that At the same time, I have to believe it actually happened.
Oh my god.
The sound was real, and the figure at my window was real. My dad and I looked around the property to find no one. He told me I just had a bad dream and to go back to sleep. I hope he was right. Number 1.
Okay, the last one.
I was having a horrifying dream. Possibly the most disturbing nightmare of my life.
I don't have nightmares.
I was in my house.
No, maybe just pause before I listen to this last one. I don't have nightmares, to be honest, Sonic. Don't you know? No. Well, I did have 3 nightmares in the Halloween episode of my epic world, not that long, like nearly a week ago, but... No, but... That's not had it. I don't have nightmares very often. Do you not? No. Do you have nightmares? Not really. No, I only had those 3 nightmares were the only nightmares I've had it like pretty much all year. Oh, pardon me. The only nightmares I've had all year. Was it? Good to know. Okay, let's finish this video. We'll keep on going for a little bit. It won't go on for that long, much longer, but you know. Keep it going for a little bit longer, and yeah.
Or the closest thing to my house that my dream could produce. Ironically enough, I was in bed in this dream, or at least I can only start remembering past the point of my lying in bed, and all of a sudden, the sound...
Now it just scared the crap out of me. Call me okay? Yeah, I was just paying attention to my room in the background, so sorry about that.
It came from downstairs. I walked downstairs in the dark, not turning on any lights, to where I thought the sound was coming from. I was on my middle floor now. The dream was telling me to go downstairs to my laundry room, and so I did. But as I got there, expecting
this video is pretty much just the moon background. It was better than any jump scares, so I'm not complaining.
The noise to be louder and closer.
Yeah, you have a point.
It sounded like it was just as far as before. Now I was going upstairs to the kitchen, and it's strange. Outside of every window was complete blackness, not general nighttime darkness. There was nothingness. I think all that existed in this dream was my house. Now my dream started to suggest that the banging sounds were coming from upstairs, so I went back upstairs, and was eventually led to the attic door. It was surely beyond that door. I opened it. There was an old woman standing by a bunch of boxes. She was slowly but loudly slamming her hand on one of the boxes, producing an unnatural sound. I tried to quietly step back away from the attic, but the old woman turned around, opened her mouth twice as wide as anyone humanly could, reached out her arms, began to scream, and leaped toward me. That's when I woke up. I thought it was just a horrific dream, but when I heard a bang coming from downstairs, a bang similar to what I heard in my dream, I felt my heart completely drop.
Oh my god.
On my way downstairs, there was another bang. It was the front door. I got the butcher knife from my knife holder in the kitchen and crouched behind the door. I was waiting for the next time he would pound on the door, and I would warn him to go away. I waited for a good minute in silence, and finally decided to take a quick look through the window. There was somebody standing in my driveway. I couldn't tell if he was facing me or looking at me or not, but he was surely the one who was pounding on my door at 4 in the morning. He walked away down the sidewalk moments after he must have noticed me. The pounding on my door was the kind of pounding you would expect from someone trying to break in a door, not to get a house owner's attention. I thought it was just crazy and horrifying that the pounding and banging from this potential robber or killer didn't wake me up. Rather, it became the key point to a horrifying dream.
I hope you enjoyed these lists of so sweet dreams. Well, Sonic's not going to have any sweet dreams now, is he? You do have a point about that, to be honest, Colin. Okay, so, well, obviously, in the next episode, or the episode after, we'll watch these creepy, the horrifying true stories, volume series thing. I mean, he'll do more of these, because the last one he did of these was, like, in 2019, so it's not that long ago. Okay, watch some spider horror stories. What is spider?
Set yourself free from your old
spider horror stories?
Download the Starling
Well,
app
at this
today.
point, there's horror stories of pretty much anything at this point, Sonic.
Sweet and crunchy bell
That's
peppers
what
from
I've learned from these
Sainsbury's
kind of
are now
videos.
price matched to Aldi.
You've got a lot to learn, Hedgehog. Were they... Did I just hear spider sound effects on Minecraft? Right? Yeah, I just heard spider sound effects from Minecraft. Well, I've seen the spider mode for a while, but to be honest, they're the weirdest mob for me, because they're the biggest ones.
I spent a solid weekend playing on the computer a few years ago, drinking a lot of ephedra and coffee and generally not sleeping much. Every so often I'd feel an itch on my arms, like a loose hair falling on them. I'd brush it off and go back to staring at the computer. As this itching was happening more frequently, I started wondering if I was just imagining things, or delusional from the tea and insomnia. But then I noticed what appeared to be tiny spiders on my arms. Am I going crazy? Are these drug bugs or what? And I went back to the screen. Then I saw the strings of thin webs glistening in the light, and tiny spiders floating past my vision. They were real indeed. I noticed a hole in the ceiling where they appeared to be falling from. I blasted a can of wasp spray into the hole, and hundreds of these little spiders began pouring out, streaming from their webs. Hundreds of them, all over me.
Oh yeah, that didn't take long, did it? And number 4.
I got home from work late one night, was walking onto my front stoop, when I walked right into this huge spider web. At first I didn't think much of it until I looked down, and saw about 20 to 30 baby spiders all over me. I started freaking out, then noticed the parents sitting on my door. They were huge, almost the size of a hand. So of course I didn't want to use the front door. I run to my back door, throw off all my clothes and jump in the shower. I then watch as the spiders began falling out of my hair.
Jesus Christ! I hate spiders.
I got home late and my phone was about to die. I always plugged my phone into the outlet under my
Please don't tell me this dude's got with a spider in the bed, please God no.
bed. I collapsed on my bed and reached my hand under my bed to try and find my phone's charger. But what I found instead was some kind of squishy sack. I began poking and squeezing it, when all of a sudden, I felt hundreds of little legs poking me and crawling up my arm. I pulled my arm up from under my bed, and then screamed when I saw probably 30 baby spiders crawling up my arm. I shook them off, told my parents, and jumped in the shower right away. Turned out it was a baby spider sack, and there was an even bigger mother spider living under my bed.
Of course there was.
I awoke from my deep sleep in the middle of the night to the feeling of something huge crawling around in my bed. Still half asleep, I jumped out and started freaking out, assuming it was a spider or something. With one swift motion of bravery, I flung the covers off the bed, but nothing was there. I started to think that I was just feeling it as part of a dream, and I continued to feel it until I fully woke up, so I went back to sleep. The next night, I felt the same exact thing. I felt it on my arms this time instead of my legs. Again, I jumped out of bed, still not in the fully awake state of mind. I was again freaking out and ran to my parents' room to get my dad. He was never afraid of spiders. He came to my room and flung off the sheets and covers. There was nothing there. I was convinced at this point that it had something to do with my dreams, or something was wrong with me, because there was no spider in my bed whatsoever. However, the next night, it happened again. The feeling of something huge crawling on my arm. Freaking out again, in my half-awake, confused state of mind, I once again jumped out of bed and flung off the covers, but this time I was greeted by the sight of the biggest spider I'd ever seen. Bigger than a tarantula. It quickly crawled under my bed and out of sight as I screamed and went off to my parents' room again to tell my dad.
Jesus Christ. Oh my God, I hate spiders.
This happened when I was staying with my grandma for the weekend. My uncle still lived with her, and occasionally I would stay over to work with my uncle for some good pay. Anyway, I was exhausted after a long day's work with my uncle, so I basically fell into the rickety old guest bed upstairs. I watched some TV for about 10 minutes before just deciding to go to sleep. It was a hot night. You know how on hot nights you constantly have to flip over the pillow to the cooler side? Well, when I did that, I put my head back down on the pillow. I didn't feel the soft, cushiony pillow on my cheek. I felt a furry, indescribable object press up on my face. I jumped up in response to it and saw a giant, full-grown huntsman spider sitting on my pillow.
Oh my god.
I fell to the opposite side of the bed, and I guess the shaking scared the thing because it took off at the speed of light. Where it went, I have no idea. I'm pretty sure the thing is still in my grandma's house.
As you learn from these videos, Sonic, you could find anything related to Holler with a fucking whatever the hell. Okay, watch two more. Watch this and the Craigslist stories, and then that'll be it for today's video.
Number 4.
Good idea, Carl.
This happened during a Boy Scout campout when I was 15. My friend, who was supposed to share the tent with me, called out from the trip at the last minute, so that meant I had to pitch the tent and sleep in it alone. The sun was going down, and after a long day of hiking, we got back to camp to set up our tents. It was already dark at that point, and I was still trying to set it up. It wasn't as easy doing it yourself. Someone came over and finally helped me, and then we ate dinner. After the cliched telling of scary stories around the campfire, we all went to sleep. I guess I was a little happy that I had my own tent at that point, since I had more room. I fell asleep quickly, but woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of somebody stomping around my tent. I immediately assumed it was another scout going to take a leak or something. You may be thinking that all our tents were pitched right next to each other, but our scoutmasters actually had us pitch our tents far apart, so I was pretty far from my closest scoutmates. The stomping around the tent seemed to just be going around in a circle, so at that point, I was sure somebody was messing with me. I asked who it was, and in response to that, they stomped off into the woods. I almost found myself going out and following them, but I figured it wasn't worth it, and just tried to fall back asleep. But after that, it was hard to. Sure enough, the stomping came back, and started circling the tent again. I was pissed off now, so I got up and unzipped the door to the tent. I was expecting to see another scout, but when I confronted the person making the noise, instead I saw a grown man, probably 6'5", in his mid-30s. My heart was racing and I couldn't even gather up the courage to scream. The man gave me a creepy smile, and then brought his finger to his lips, signaling for me to be quiet.
No!
I did a quick 180 and sprinted to my scoutmaster's tent, screaming like a baby. He ran out before I even reached the tent, and I told him about the man I saw. He and the other scoutmaster ran over to my tent with one of the hunting rifles, but they didn't find the man. They did, however, pick up on the tracks the man left walking around the tent. We were all told to bring our tents closer together, like literally right on top of each other. The trip was cut short the next day and we all went home. I have never gone camping since, and I never will again. Number 3.
I've never been camping.
So me and a couple of my buddies went camping last summer alongside the Willamette River. We actually had a decent hike into the deep end of woods. We did some night fishing, listening to music, and basically drank to the point where everything was funny later in the night. I would guess we finally called it a night somewhere past 2 a.m. I shared a tent with one of my buds, while the other two shared another tent. We heard them laughing about something. At first we laughed at the sound of their laughing, but it soon got annoying and we yelled for them to shut up. One of them responded, "It isn't us." I sat up, startled at the response. I came to realize that it was the sound of only one person laughing, and it didn't sound like either one of my friends. Even in my drunk state, I realized how odd it was for somebody to be out this far in the woods so late at night. The laughing gradually got closer and louder to our campout. My friend shot up and looked at me with a worried look on his face. I heard my other friends scream over to us that they were getting freaked out. As the laughing got even closer, I could make it out very clearly to be the laugh of a male, probably in his 30s or 40s. He sounded like he was as drunk as us, messing around with friends, but we only heard his laugh, nobody else. There was something indescribably creepy about his laugh too, as if it was missing something to it. You had to be there to understand what I mean. The laughing was now just at the edge of our campsite. But we couldn't hear any footsteps at all. Now that may not seem like a big deal, It was impossible to move through that without making noise. And finally, all of a sudden, the laughing stopped completely. We had no idea where whoever that was standing, as he hadn't made a single stepping sound. We sat there in silence looking at each other. My friend was clearly freaking out, but he was keeping it together the best he could. Finally, something broke the silence. The sound of something rubbing against the cottony fabric of the tent. We saw the outline of a hand through the moonlight, pressing on the tent. We both screamed at the top of our lungs before getting out of the tent. We ran as fast as we could through the woods, our other friends following us. After about 5 minutes of running, we somehow found our car. I actually puked from running so much before taking the wheel. I don't condone drinking and driving, but I still believe we were just in this situation. By far the most horrific experience of my life. No idea who or what the hell that was, or what they wanted.
To be honest, I don't blame you.
Number 2. After college, I went backpacking in the Canadian wilderness for a few weeks by myself. To put this in perspective, I was in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town was a 3-hour bus ride away, and I only saw one other person, who was from a distance. He was in a canoe, during the entire 7 days. I brought a few disposable cameras with me, as this was before digital cameras were too widespread. I took a lot of pictures. When I got home, I had them developed and took a look at them. The pictures were standard nature shots, until I got about halfway through my first camera. There were 2 pictures of me asleep in my tent in my sleeping bag. I literally freaked out when I saw it, and I had a complete breakdown. To this day, I have no idea how those pictures got taken. I haven't been camping since, and I sleep with my door open and my curtains shut, and I still get the paranoid feeling that whoever took those pictures is still watching me somehow.
Well, shut the door then.
Number 1. My boyfriend and I decided to go out to the gorge for some quality time camping. We had always gone with several other people, but this was the first time it was just us two. When we got out of our car to prep our gear for the mile hike back to the camping spot, 2 sketchy looking dudes came out of the trailhead, eyed us, and went back onto their old school Volkswagen camper van. I had a weird feeling, but shrugged it off and proceeded back to our camping spot. I had previously camped in the same area a handful of times, and I knew it pretty well.
Oh God.
Once we got back there, I knew of a handful of different camping spots, and proceeded to check them all out for the one that would be ideal for us. I noticed what looked like someone camping further up the hill, so I picked a spot a little further down where we'd most likely be out of sight. Not out of earshot though, as I heard him yelling with someone else back over on the trail. It was starting to get dark by the time we got everything set up, so I figured I'd start looking for firewood. Suddenly, this guy appears out of nowhere and asks us if we'd like any help, and offered to sell us a bundle of firewood for $10. I laughed because we were in the woods, thus surrounded by wood, which I could pick up off the ground for free. He then said that I wouldn't find much because they'd already cleared it out over the past few weeks. Few weeks? I asked him how long he'd been camping up there, and he said almost a month. I already had the creeps about him, and he claimed he was up there by himself. I asked him why I heard him yelling with someone then, and that he had referred to more people when he was talking about the wood. He stammered and was like, yeah, there's some dudes I know camping over there up on the other side of the river.
Yeah, he's stuttering,
Then he proceeds to tell us that he's been lonely since he arrived. He was from Pennsylvania, took a bus to Lexington, and had been living in the woods back behind where I currently work. I knew exactly where he was talking about, because I saw some homeless people, immigrants, and drug addicts coming in and out of those woods every day. So basically, he was a homeless man who somehow got a ride out to the gorge and decided he would just live there instead. He had been living on snakes, bugs, and selling firewood for money.
Yeah.
But he said we were the first people he'd seen in a few weeks. His stories were all over the place, and I knew he was lying about a lot of what he told us. He wasn't alone, even if he claimed to be. He even took us to his camp where there were tons of stuff for several guys, not just one. He said he liked camping up top where he could see everything, and everyone. Then showed up our campsite. He had a straight shot view. By now it was dark and he helped us get a fire going. I was trying to politely get him on his way back up the hill so I could have a minute to process all of this. When he left, I started whispering to my boyfriend that there was no way in hell I could sleep with that lying, sketchy homeless creep right up the hill. We didn't have a gun, knife, or even a dog to protect ourselves if we needed to.
God damn it.
My boyfriend somehow convinced me to stay a little longer, so we planned to stay the night. But all throughout the night, we heard twigs and branches snapping around our tarp, as if somebody was watching us. It was that man. I knew it was. He was standing out there, watching us. I said let's quietly get our shit together and get the hell out of there. Which we did, only we left our new tarp set up because they would make too much noise and he'd know we were leaving. As soon as I stood up with my pack, ready to get the hell out of there, he yells, "Leaving so soon?" We proceeded to get away from there as quickly as possible. The most disturbing thing, as we were getting away from there, the man yelled for us to come back. That only made us go even faster. In my mind, we were either getting robbed, raped, killed, or something, because he was not alone. His stories didn't add up, and his background of where he came from made me believe he was running from something and was trying to hide by living off the grid. I called the Rangers the next morning and told them about him. Luckily, all he got from us was a set of new tarps.
God damn. Well, I would go camping, but to be honest, I don't know if I would after that. Right, which could be a good video to end on. You know what? Let's watch the let's watch the Craigslist stories, and that'll be it. Are you ready, Sonic? Yep. Last video. Yep. Last video. And you can chill the frick out for a bit, Jesus Christ.
Number 3. I'm a 22-year-old girl. I was looking on Craigslist to buy a couch for my new apartment a month ago. I found something I thought seemed like a good deal. From the pictures, the couch seemed to be in great shape. The seller wanted to be contacted by email. His email was mexicanpoppy666@hotmail.com.
Oh god,
I felt that email was a bit
never
off-putting, but I still went ahead and emailed the man my offer. He responded within 5 minutes accepting the offer and asking for my address. I honestly felt uncomfortable with his asking. I did not want a stranger coming to my house. I suggested that I just come to his house to pick it up, but he continually insisted that he come to my house.
Why?
Eventually I stopped responding, and a day later, he emailed me again, giving me his address. I didn't know if I should go at that point, but it seemed like a steal, almost too good to be true, and according to his address, he didn't live too far.
Actually, we'll watch one more video, Sonic. The 12 disturbing Craigslist ads, but that's only 9 minutes.
So I got in my van and drove over to the seller's house. I immediately noticed that the house was a bit smaller than all the other houses on the block. When I rang the bell, a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap answered the door. He gave me a huge smile and invited me in. I was immediately feeling uneasy. He led me into his living room, and I saw the couch. Immediately, I saw scuff marks and small tears in the couch. It was not at all in the shape that it appeared in the ad. I commented on this, and he just smiled and offered to lower the price. I told him I'm not interested, and here's where things started getting creepy. As I was making my way out of the house, he put his hand on my shoulder and offered to give it to me for free if I was willing to, quote-unquote, give something to him.
Oh, for God's sake.
I let out a disgusted gasp and got back into my car. I didn't even look up out the window. I just drove away from there quickly. But it doesn't end there. That same night, I was laying in my bed watching TV when I thought I heard somebody stomping up the steps of my porch. I muted the TV and was able to clearly hear the sound of somebody fiddling with my front doorknob. I jumped out of my bed and tiptoed over to the front door to look through the peephole, but whoever it was already gone. And then, I thought I could hear the sound of the gate to the backyard opening and closing. That was when I grabbed the phone and dialed 911. Soon after,
Actually, we'll just watch this one because,
the sound of somebody
because I'm getting a bit tired and, you know.
fiddling with the doorknob to the back door of the apartment.
Yeah, I got
I yelled to whoever it was that the police were on their way, and after that, I heard the sound of the gate opening and closing again. They were gone. This was a month ago, and nothing has happened since. but I still can't sleep at night. I'm 99% sure it was the man that was selling the couch. He must have followed me home. There was no way it was just a coincidence. I don't plan on using Craigslist anymore, and I'm still trying to find a new apartment. Number 2. I was looking for a car to buy for my son for his 18th birthday. I was searching all the typical car websites, Cars.com, eBay Motors. They were all overpriced as expected. Craigslist was the only place to find an actual deal. About a week into my search, I found an 03 Toyota Camry. It had 67,000 miles, no accidents, no damage, and good condition for only $3,500. This seemed like a steal for such a reliable car with such low mileage. The seller lived about 10 miles from me, which was a reasonable drive when looking for a car. I gave him a call to set up a time to come check it out. The man sounded normal on the phone. He assured me that there were absolutely no problems with the car. He introduced himself as Bob. I brought along $3,500 in cash, even though I planned on wiggling down the price as much as possible. I pulled up the dirt road to Bob's property about 15 minutes early. It was a tiny little house with a decent-sized property, only because it was a bit far from the nearest neighbors. The garage was open, so I walked over to see if anybody was inside, but except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight. The only car on the property was an old pickup truck.
The frick?
I went over to the front door to check the house numbers. It was the right address. The doorbell button was missing, so I knocked on the front door. I knocked for exactly 5 minutes before deciding to give the man a call. So I dialed his number and I heard the sound of his cell phone ringing from inside the house. I was extremely confused at this point. Now I knew I had the right house. I didn't understand why, if he was home, why he wasn't answering. I decided I had to take a peek through one of the windows to see if anybody was inside.
Hello?
Peering through the glass, I couldn't really see much as it was pretty dark inside the house. I saw a very old-fashioned dining room set, but across from that, I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, staring outside. I figured that must have been Bob, so I knocked on the window, but he didn't even move. There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide-open yard, since this wasn't a rural area. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand how he couldn't hear me. When I got to the back door, I made a shocking realization. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being. I ran straight back the way I came and back to my car.
Oh my god, oh my god.
I looked up one last time before
Sonic,
driving
calm
off.
down.
The blinds to the window I had peeked into had been shut, but I could see 2 of the blinds bent open. Somebody was at that window watching me. You can probably guess I had the gas pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human being, the fact that there was no car there leads me to believe that whoever that man wasn't planning on selling me anything. And that also leads to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out that man's back door. Number 1.
Oh my
I was looking.
god. You got that right, Colin. God. Bloody hell. You made a lucky escape there, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, the last story of this video.
To buy the iPhone 5 about a year ago. I found a guy on Craigslist who was selling his for $200. He claimed it was in mint condition and that he wanted to upgrade to the 5C.
Mint condition.
I didn't know much about how to go about testing a phone to make sure everything works, so I brought my little brother along who knew a lot more than I did. We met halfway at a Dunkin' Donuts parking lot at like 10 o'clock at night. 2 large, intimidating guys stepped out of a black Honda Civic and walked over to us. One of the guys pulled out the phone and showed it to me. It didn't have a scratch on it. My brother took out my SIM card and popped it into this new phone. He did some testing and told me that it works. The guy then asked for $250, even though he originally asked for $200. I lied and told him I only brought $200, and he seemed a bit unhappy with this. I did have $250, but I didn't want to spend more than his original asking price. I kind of figured it was his way of making sure I didn't haggle down the price. I handed the guy the 200 and he and his buddy got back in their car. We got back into my car and I tested out the new phone by calling my girlfriend. I sat testing things around for about 5 minutes. My brother commented on the fact that the two guys hadn't left yet either, but I didn't really care. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. My brother then commented that the two guys started their car just as I had. I didn't find it too weird. I drove down the turnpike and eventually stopped at a red light. That's when I noticed the black Honda Civic pull up right behind us in my rear view mirror. I found that a bit weird since I was sure they came from the opposite direction. I continued my drive home, but every single turn we made, they followed, and close on my tail too. My brother suggested I pull over, but there was no way I was going to do that. I knew those guys were looking for trouble. It got to the point where I was trying to lose them and started driving dangerously. If they needed something, they would call or at least honk their horn, but they were looking for some kind of trouble. I tried something risky to lose them. At an intersection, the light had just turned red. I floored it across the intersection before any of the cars would begin to pass. My brother shouted at me, calling me stupid and crazy, but it worked. They didn't follow. We got home after the extra long drive. My heart was still racing from the intensity of the situation. I was just happy I got a working phone for such a low cost. Later that night, I was playing around with the phone trying to set some things up before going to bed. My parents and brother were already asleep at this point, and just then, the sound of 2 car doors slamming shut outside interrupted me. I looked out my window, and I felt like my heart completely stopped. The black Honda Civic was parked across the street.
Wait, what?
I could only assume the two guys were already halfway to our front door.
This isn't good.
I immediately woke up my dad and explained everything as quickly as possible.
No, it's not Sonic. No, it's not.
He got up, grabbed a baseball bat, and crouched behind the front door.
Oh, damn! He's got the baseball bat.
A loud knock came at the front door. My dad screamed at them to go away. One of the guys on the other side of the door claimed to have a gun, and said that he would shoot the lock off of the door if he didn't open up. My dad told me to call Joe, our friend who lives 2 doors down who happens to be a police officer. I called Joe and he said he would be right over and to stay hidden. Here's the part that still scares me to this day. There was the sound of a silenced shot of a pistol. I peeked over and saw a bullet hole in the door, inches away from my dad's head. My dad ran away from the door and we all listened. We heard Joe outside yelling at them to drop their weapons. My dad went outside to help when they lowered their guns. Joe arrested the 2 assholes. I have to say, this was the scariest day of my life, but it was also the best I had ever felt in my entire life.
Sorry, I won't do that again. Oh my god. Well, that's going to be the end of this video here. That's going to be the end of this video here. I hope you have enjoyed it. Sonic, what did you think about all these stories? They're bloody terrifying, and I don't know if I can sleep tonight. Sonic, if you want, you can stay over at my place. You sure? Of course. Thanks, bro. You're welcome. And, yeah. Go check out Sonic's channel in the description down below. He's not uploaded anything yet, but he will do at some point. But, yeah. In the next, I might do this once a week on like a Monday or so. But, you know, we're just going to have to figure out when. But yeah, The Walking Dead will return on Sunday. Which is when I'm recording this tomorrow. But I don't know when this is coming out. But you might already see this when it's already out. Don't we know yet. But Sonic, I'll see you in a minute. Because obviously you're coming off to my place. Yeah, go check out Sonic's channel in the description down below. I'll put a link down to it in the description if you go subscribe and wait want to upload anything. But for now, thanks for watching, and me and Sonic will see you in the next episode. Goodbye. See you later, everybody.